Hey guys, how you doing? Hope you having good day. In this video, I am gonna talk about what if Deku was manipulated to love Lust Goddess Himiko Toga. Part 1. And subscribe for more, also like this video, that will be super duper awesome, helps me to stay motivate. And thanks to the author of this story, this video is possible. So do check it out and show some love. Name of this fanfic is Love Bites by Lestat 719. So do check out the author of this story and check out entire work. Also, if you have any complaints about videos, feel free to comment, I will try to improve them. Let's jump in video. The day had been a hell of a day. Training summer camp had been intense and honestly pretty much a shit show from the time they were dropped off on a cliff and they had to fight their way to camp, almost got hit in the balls, and had no time to try and talk to Ochaco. He wanted to tell her how he felt about her, but not with this camp. They're on them ragged then, have them make dinner, let's do this for a few nights, yell at them for trying to have some measure of fun, and your reward is a test of courage. They understood that it was the UA, the premier hero school in Japan, if not the world. But could they cut a margin of slack for the love of All Might? They had survived a villain attack, passed their finals, and fought and beat a teacher in a practical exam, and he had to fight All Might and deal with Bakugo in the process. That son of a bitch had taken a swing at him for suggesting they work together, Izuku had almost swung on him, and he was tired of it. Then, 2 minutes into the test of courage, he sucks it up and bares his heart to the first girl he has ever loved. Shut down, best friends, she wants to focus on becoming heroes. Yeah, this was shaping up to be a summer camp he would look back on and never forget. Now, an attack, a villain attack, at camp. He didn't know who the director of security was for the UA, but they deserved to be fired. Fire, smoke, and lost children were all just part of the fantastic experience of the UA summer camp. Bring the kiddies, no joy will be had, and they will cry themselves to sleep every night. Not that he was bitter, tired, upset, or hurt in the feelings. No, he wasn't bitter. He was downright pissed off. He just wanted something akin to an everyday experience, just a little peace. Maybe they fall in love, go on some dates, and support each other while they work to be heroes together. Study late, sneak some kisses in when they were supposed to be studying. Some who wanted him, who wished to be with Izuku. He raced to the mountain, a child was in possible danger. Kota was a pain, but his pain was understandable. Once Izuku knew what had happened to his parents, his anger and hostility towards heroes made sense. Izuku arrived at the mountain, hoping to grab the kid and return to the others quickly, but life kicked him in nuts again. Muscular, the villain who killed Kota's parents, was here to kill whomever he encountered. Then he let it slip they were there not only for him but for Bakugo. It probably had to do with the spectacle he had made after he fucking won the sports festival. No, he needed to calm down. He lost because of his stupidity, and thankfully, Gran Torino had kicked that out of him, in this case, quite literally. He did find it funny in a sad way that Bakugo had become a meme for his antics. They shouldn't have chained him to the post, but then again, he shouldn't have been such a fucking basket case that he needed to be. Izuku chalked it up to mistakes that had been made. Now Muscular, that was a fucking mistake, one broken arm and the other one barely working. But there wasn't time to worry about that. He needed to get a warning to the rest of his class and the teachers. This not fighting back thing was not in the class's best interest. He got Kota back safely, and of course, Bakugo wasn't back yet, and neither was Ochaco. He dashed into the forest and came across Mandalay and Tiger engaged in battle with 2 villains. These were allies of Muscular and had come to kill. He has nearly at his wit's end, he had enough of this bullshit, and he was done. He went immediately after a young man with reptilian features, had bright green scales for skin, and a face shaped like a lizard. He sports relatively long hair that is swept backward and is a desaturated pinkish purple, which stands out from the rest of his colors. He appeared to have a deep admiration toward Stain. His clothes were similar to that of the hero killer. A sleeveless shirt and dark baggy pants paired with black shoes and pale, metallic knee guards. He covers his face with a long tattered strip of cloth mask, the same as the one Stain wore, along with a red scarf and bandages wrapped around both his arms, partially concealed by black wristbands and plain black boots. Goggles on his forehead and an enormous sword made of many smaller blades bound together complete his look. The villain hesitated when Izuku charged right at him. Izuku did not, and with a booming spinning kick, he struck the villain in the stomach and followed up as the villain flew back. When the lizard man struck the tree, Izuku thrust him through it. The other villain is a woman who has a broad, muscular physique. Her hair was shoulder length, smooth, and had a reddish magenta color. She had a square jaw that was thinly covered in facial hair. Her lips were noticeably large and had a slightly more pinkish hue. She always wore white-framed triangular sunglasses that obscured her eyes. She also had on an unbuttoned dark orange shirt, revealing the white V-neck she was wearing underneath. She paired it with blue jeans, a belt, and plain dark brown espadrilles on her feet. faltered at the integrity of the young man's attack, as did Tiger and Mandalay, but they recovered faster than their opponent. Mandalay rushed in, distracting them as Tiger swept them off their feet. As they fell, Mandalay sent them airborne, driving the wind out of their opponent. Izuku was immediately airborne. The woman could only look on in horror as Izuku reared back and drove her back into the ground, knocking her out and leaving a crater in the ground. He landed, biting back the pain from his broken arm. "The villains are after Bakugo," he said, "we need to locate him and get him back to the lodge." He turned, still rushed on adrenaline, and raced into the forest. He hadn't gotten far when he felt danger coming from the right and dived to the side, nearly yelling out as he rolled on top of the broken arm. A shadowy claw came crashing down right where he was. He stared in near disbelief at the enormous rampaging form of dark shadows. Mizo came out of nowhere, yelling for Izuku to run. They scamper away as another attack comes crashing down. What the hell happened? Izuku yells as he and Mizo dive away from another attack. "We were attacked by this villain who called himself Moonfish," Mizo yelled, quickly describing a tall man with fair skin and black eyes. He wore a black straitjacket, which left his mouth uncovered. The straitjacket is held together by black restraints adorned with red spikes. These same restraints are connected to metal clamps covering the villain's head and keeping his lips open, causing him to drool sometimes. Other straps cross his torso, waist, and the top of his boots. Fumi had me fall back, and then this happened. Mizo pointed to a dark shadow. "We need to get to Bakugo," Izuku responded. "He is their target. We must save Fumi, you must decide we can't save both," Mizo replied. "That is where you are wrong, my friend. Shoto and Kitsuki battle with the villain Moonfish, even though they are not in an excellent position to win. Shoto is carrying Kasei, which makes it difficult for him to fight properly. Shoto uses ice to block Moonfish's path to keep him at bay. Kitsuki becomes angry that he can't fight back and suggests using a considerable explosion to stop Moonfish. However, Shoto warns him that it will limit their visibility and give the villain more opportunities to attack. Mizo and Izuku came barreling in suddenly to their location, with Mizo asking them to create some light. Before he can explain further, Moonfish senses their presence and sends one of his teeth to attack them. Suddenly, Dark Shadow appears and crushes Moonfish with its enormous claw, destroying Moonfish's teeth. Shoto and Kitsuki are surprised by Dark Shadow's intervention. Izuku planned to lure Dark Shadow to their location by creating decoys from Mizo's replicant arms. The plan worked, and Izuku was happy to see Kitsuki. He is relieved that he doesn't have to choose between saving one of his classmates and sacrificing the other. Kitsuki and Shoto are taken aback by what has just happened. Mizo again requests that Kitsuki and Shoto use their quirks to create light to pacify Dark Shadow. However, just before Shoto can use his quirk, Kitsuki stops him, telling him to wait. Moonfish, using his teeth, gets up and starts shouting that he is the only one allowed to harm the children. Moonfish then attacks the rampaging Dark Shadow with his teeth, but Dark Shadow is not affected by Moonfish's counterattack. Dark Shadow seems to be utterly immune to it. Dark Shadow grabs Moonfish and throws him through several trees, heavily injuring Moonfish and leaving him incapacitated. With Moonfish defeated, Kitsuki and Shoto can get close to Fumikage and use their quirks to calm down Dark Shadow. They force the sentient quirk back and retreat into Fumi, allowing him to regain control. Izuku wavered as the day of constant quirk use, multiple fights, and broken arms were wearing him down. He wavered on his feet slightly, but Mizo steadied him. Izuku nodded his head and they moved off towards the lodge. Ochaco. The day was not good, aside from puking her guts out most of the day, she was happy and nervous when paired with Izuku for the courage test. Then he started talking to her, he was about to confess to her, and she knew it, she wanted him to confess. Lord knows she did, she had a crush on him since the entrance exam, and everything that had happened had deepened that feeling, until she was hopelessly in love with him. The battle trial against Bakugo, the USJ attack, the sports festival, the mall incident, and how he would chew on the end of his pencil in class. He would always take a sip of the tea when he knew it was too hot and rapidly blow on it to try and cool it down. Not that she noticed. They had tried to talk a few times, he had wanted to get her alone off to the side, she knew it was coming, and then when he was about to give her what she wanted, she hit him with a friend and focused on being hero bullshit. She was mentally berating herself, wondering if she should kiss and tell him she was sorry. She liked him too, but she just panicked that it would be alright. As the words flew out her mouth, she saw them land like punches from All Might and she felt like total shit for doing it. Tsu was going to be so mad at her, it was Tsu who had traded with 3 different people to get it so they could walk together. Then not only did Ochaco fuck that up, bam. Villain attack. Now she and Tsu were fighting for the lives of a psycho villainous girl with messy blonde buns. Tsu was bleeding, and so was Ochaco, and this grinning psychopath, Himiko Toga, was trying to kill them with a maniacal grin on her face. Today was not a good day. Ochaco had managed to pin the psycho to the ground, thank God for interning with Gunhead, when the day just kept getting worse. After Ochaco apprehends Himiko on the ground, Tsuyu is asked to restrain her arms. However, Himiko starts conversing with Ochaco and says they share a lot. Himiko confesses that they both are in love with someone. She tells Ochaco she relates to how she feels because they are both girls. Himiko says that people in love try to emulate their loved ones. How could only an idiot cast aside the love of their special someone? Ochaco is infuriated by Himiko's words. Himiko mentions that love stories are fascinating and proceeds to stab Ochaco's leg with her machine, catching her off guard because of her talking. Himiko begins to extract Ochaco's blood. Sue immediately sprang into action by flinging Ochaco away with her tongue. Sue yelled for Ochaco to run and get help, but Himiko struck back quickly, throwing a knife, pinching Tsu's tongue to a tree, and closing the distance, another knife at the frog girl's quirk. "You're in love as well," Himiko purrs, "you in love with her and him," she whispers. Tsu's eyes go wide at her words and at the precarious position she is in. "I can smell it on you. It is so intoxicating." Himiko leans and licks Tsu's cheek. Tsu shudders in horror as Ochaco yells at her to back away from Tsu. The sound of crashing trees as Izuku comes tumbling into the clearing. A sickening crack is heard as he screams in pain, his face is a crimson mask, blood pouring from his numerous wounds. Another Nomu comes crashing in as another is launched into the air by a pillar of ice. A massive explosion comes up below it, nearly ashing the thing instantly. The Nomu staggers to its feet only for Izuku to come in and deliver a crushing blow to the beast's head, no pausing to admire his deed. He rolls to his feet and tackles Himiko away from Tsu, tumbling off into the forest. Himiko rolls and drives the knife that was at Tsu's neck into his gut. He winces in pain but does not cry out. She tries to rise, pulling another knife. Using his good arm, he yanks her back down on top of him, and with little choice, he bites down into her shoulder hard. He feels her freeze, he grabs and throws her side, he struggles, desperately trying to get to his feet. She looks at him, her eyes nearly glazed. Himiko staggers to her feet in shock, her hand on her shoulder, blood staining her sweater from the bite. Hearts form in her eyes as she stares at Izuku. He would later retell this part when asked, but no one believed him about the hard part. "I love you too," she whispers, and he stops confused. "Of course, I will go out with you. Please make love to me, right here, right now." She dashes towards him only to be intercepted and knocked away by Ochaco, who came out of nowhere. "DEKU," she says, seeing him stagger, she wants to reach out to him. "Go on, I will be alright," he says. She hesitates, but with a nod of her head, she races off after the crazy blonde with a knife fetish. Ochaco bursts through the brush as Himiko stares daggers at her. "How dare you interrupt? He just confessed to me, and right when he was about to ravage me, you had to kick me." "Confess? Ravage you?" Ochaco replied. "When did he confess?" Himiko tears open her shirt, showing the bleeding wound on her shoulder. "Right here, he made me as his mate. Wait, are you jealous?" "What?" Ochaco stammered. "You jealous that he chose me?" Himiko begins to stalk toward them. "You want him for yourself. You want to take away my mate, my chosen one, my lover. Well, you can't have him, you can't have him. He is mine, you hear me?" Himiko lunges at Ochaco wildly. "If he wants to have you after he takes me, we can talk about it." Ochaco sidestepped the wild attack, slightly bewildered at the madwoman's statements. Himiko whirls to attack again, but Ochaco doesn't give her a chance. She closes the distance and cracks Himiko with a right cross. "You fucking stay away from DEKU, you psycho." Himiko stops. "DEKU, DEKU, did you just call the love of my life useless, the owner of my heart, the master of my body? Did you call him useless?" "No, well, kind of," Ochaco begins to say. "Why the fuck am I explaining this to you?" "Oh, you will explain yourself, even if I have to carve my answers out of your fat ass." "Fat ass? You are jealous that he is going to kick your skinny ass to the curb," Ochaco said, goading Himiko into attacking. "Then, afterward, he is going to have his hands all over a real woman." Himiko saw red as she rushed this damn bitch who was insulting her lover and had ruined the perfect moment. She was going to carve this into the plump, kind of sexy possible second lover for her ideal mate. Ochaco swung a short right cross. Himiko changed levels, her blade flashing towards Ochaco's stomach. Ochaco managed to pivot and avoid most of the attack, but it did slice her clothing, revealing her toned stomach and a slight bit of blood. Himiko spun and rushed again, trying to keep this bitch off balance. Her next attack started low, then rose at the last second, splitting Ochaco's clothing right across her chest, but he had leaned back, so her clothes were the only thing damaged this time. She immediately went low and swept Himiko's leg out from under her. Himiko toppled backward as Ochaco scrambled, pinned the hand with the knife, wrestling it free. The knife flew off to the side. Himiko slipped her hand into Ochaco's clothes and honked her breasts, making the gravity user freeze, allowing Himiko to land a quick left hook, knocking Ochaco off of her. Himiko scrambled to pull another blade, but Ochaco was faster, running up and tackling her from the side. This time, she slammed her hand onto Himiko's back, activating her quirk. He rolled through, got a leg under Himiko, and kicked her off into the sky. "Fuck you, bitch." Ochaco yelled as she pressed her fingers together and Himiko came plummeting down. She wasn't high enough to die from the fall, but it was going to hurt. Himiko crashed to the ground, her breath forced from her body. Ochaco rushed in, ready to finish the fight. Himiko rolled to her feet and launched herself at Ochaco, spearing her in the gut, leaving Ochaco breathless. As soon as Himiko's feet hit the ground, she pushed up, driving her head under Ochaco's chin, snapping the girl's head back. Himiko tried to press her advantage only to take a jumping knee to the face, followed by a right hook and left to the body. Himiko dropped to a knee. When Ochaco went to land a kick to her face, she managed to duck under, drew a blade, and drove into Ochaco's calf. Himiko screamed as a stiletto blade appeared in her hand and leaped to drive into Ochaco's neck. The strike never came as Tsu flew in with a dropkick, sending Himiko again into the forest. "Fucking again," Himiko screamed. "Himiko." She landed in a clearing. As she turned, she saw Izuku again covered in blood, his fist colliding with the brain of yet another Nomu. She stared in awe as she saw him roar with rage and tear the beast in half. "Fuck you," he bellowed. "My love," she whispered in awe, getting to her feet. He turned and saw her. She saw him stumble, regain his balance, and take a fighting stance. "Where is Ochaco?" he yelled. "Back there," Himiko said dreamily, jerking her thumb over her shoulder, with the frog girl. "Are they alive?" Himiko nodded. "Look, I have had an awful day. Would you mind surrendering?" he said wearily, his vision blurred momentarily. "I will always surrender to you, my love." Himiko stumbled forward in a haze, her hands in front of her to be restrained, her thighs rubbed together, thinking of how he would tie her up, then tear her panties from her body and douse the fire roaring inside her with his seed. Her eyes widened when he suddenly tackled her as a massive boulder came crashing right where she was standing. They rolled on the ground and she fell on top of him again. "You saved me," she whispered. Before he could respond, her lips came crashing down into his. He froze, but he found himself kissing her back. She moaned lustily into his mouth before she sat up. "I love you," she said quickly. "Can you love a girl like me?" Izuku's mind was a mess, to say the least. He was exhausted, had been rejected, stabbed, had a broken arm, and now had just shared his first kiss with the woman who stabbed him. He could see it, though, this lover obsession in her eyes, but behind it, there was this fear. She was scared of being rejected, that she had been rejected and tossed aside her whole life, and she was reaching out for him. If he said no, she would shatter, the darkness would consume her, and that was it. This was her last gasp to grab a hold of the light. "Yes, but not if you are a villain," he said, looking her in the eyes. "I can't love a villain." Himiko stopped. "But I can love a girl who may have made mistakes and wants to be good. A girl who was willing to try and change. That is a girl I could love." He extended his hand. "Are you that girl?" "But my quirk, I drink blood," Himiko said as she reached out her hand slightly before she pulled it back to herself. "I don't care," Izuku said. "Can you be a good girl?" Himiko's hand reached out and she was about to take his hand when suddenly Magni and Spinner came bursting into the clearing from behind her. They had a ragdoll of the pussycats with them. Both were very battered. Tsu and Ochaco came bursting in behind Izuku. "Oh, come on," shouted Himiko. A giant pillar of blue flame erupted into the sky. Magni grabbed Himiko's hand, yanking her back. "Himiko, we got to go." "Targets are acquired," Magni said. A tanker truck fell from the sky before Himiko could protest. Shoto ran in as a pillar of ice sprung from the ground. It caught the tanker truck and he fell to his knees. He looked to Izuku. They got Bakugo. Himiko was torn as to what to do. Mina, Pony, and Ejiro came crashing through. "Himiko, we got to go," Magni yelled as she yanked the girl to the side, dodging two horns from Pony. Spinner stepped in front and threw two knives, forcing Ejiro to step in front and block the attack. "Toga!" Spinner yelled as they turned and raced off into the forest. Izuku stumbled, took a step, and stumbled again. Ochaco caught him. "Deku," she whispered. Izuku looked at her, his mind again drifted to the test of courage for just a second. "Why couldn't you have just said yes?" he whispered. One for All responded to his call, his entire body wrapped in lightning. It danced over his body. He looked down as it danced over his fingertips into hers. Her eyes went wide. "Everyone who can move," he yelled. With a gust of wind, he went into the forest as some members of 1B came into the clearing. Seeing the blur that was Izuku and the others, they barreled after him. Shoto pushed to his feet. "Don't forget about me, my friend," he thought. He saw Riko as she had just emerged from the forest, where she had been fighting. "Can you still fight?" Riko was tired, sore and bleeding, but she saw his determination. She knew she couldn't keep falling behind in Class 1A. They were all in the same state, yet they still were fighting. She saw Sed and others carrying their unconscious comrades. Their teacher had been stolen. Yes. She responded fiercely. Shoto nodded and pulled her to his side as an ice pillar exploded under their feet, launching them into the air. "You know my quirk does not allow for flight," she yelled. "No, I did not," he yelled. "Izuku." He raced through the forest in hot pursuit of the villains. He hit a clearing and saw 3 groups racing in 3 different directions. "Fuck," he yelled out. A new villain had joined the group. The villain wore a black and gray bodysuit that covered his body completely, along with gray boots. A mask covered his face. It was gray with wide eye sockets, while the lower half covering his mouth was black. He also sported red and green wristbands, which seemed odd to Izuku. Most of the suit was black, except for the section over his lower legs, and the gray designs that appear to form a T and W over his chest. He broke left. Shoto and Riko were airborne, seeing Izuku break left after one group saw their other classmates coming into view. "Go right," he yelled. "We got center." Riko grunted as she pushed her quirk to the max to get them both to the ground. She stumbled but started running. She noticed that Shoto didn't look back. She bolted after him. It pleased her that he was treating her like an equal. This is further evidence that Nito was wrong in her book. Izuku dashed after his group. He could see Himiko looking over her shoulder at him. He could see the struggle in her eyes every time she looked back. "Toga," he yelled, thankful her companions had called out her name. At least he knew her name, this girl who said she loved him. Needless to say, today had been a weird day. She wanted to call his name, but she didn't know what it was, just what that fat bitch had called him. Izuku dived in to try to tackle the party. Magni spun on her heel, and her fist collided with the back of his head. Driving him down to the ground, blackness threatened to take him. Suddenly, he felt an explosion of light in the back of his mind, a significant buildup of pressure. Suddenly, a voice exploded. "Stand up, Ninth, keep fighting." Izuku scrambled to his feet and roared in defiance. As his arm reached out, suddenly, black jagged tentacles exploded from his arms, grabbing the villains and yanking Ragdoll to him. "I got you," he said. But it felt wrong. He turned it around, and it was some doll with a bad wig. He roared and threw the villains, slamming them into trees. They crashed hard and let out yells of pain cut short as they disintegrated into a mud-like substance. He tossed the doll to the side and pulled Toga to him. "Where is the rendezvous point?" he demanded. "That way," she said quickly, her breathing erratic. "By the cliffside." "Who else is out there?" "Abi, Muscular, and Compress," she responded, grabbing what remained of his uniform. "Will you help me?" She nodded her head vigorously. "Only if you call me by my first name," Toga said. "I don't even know your name," he responded. "You don't even know my name." "Himiko, my name is Himiko," she said, getting closer to face, her breath tickling his lips. "I know your name," she almost moaned it, her body was pressed right against him. "It is my hero," she whispered, closing that final distance and kissing him. Izuku didn't hesitate this time. In his short life, this was the most intoxicating, confusing, and sexy thing ever happening to him. He kissed this strange girl back. They broke apart breathlessly. He didn't even know if this was the real one, he realized. "Let me prove that I can be a good girl so you can love me," she said, stepping back. "Follow me." They raced off into the forest. Izuku couldn't overthink about it. He could feel his body riding on adrenaline. The fighting and the kiss had his heart racing. Shoto and Ryuko stopped as a massive blast of blue fire cut off their pursuit. A reasonably tall, slim young man with a somewhat muscular build stepped out. He seemed to be in his early 20s and had pale skin. His black hair was spiked up around the crown of his head and hung low over his thin, turquoise, and heavily lidded eyes. His lower face and neck are covered in patches of gnarled, wrinkled purple skin that extend below his eyes and past his collarbone. These seem connected to his skin using several crude surgical staples or hoop piercings. He has multiple silver cartilage piercings in both ears and a triple nostril piercing on the right side of his nose. He wears a dark blue jacket with a high, ripped collar, matching pants cut off above his ankles, and a pair of dark dress shoes. He also has a plain pale gray scoop neck shirt underneath and a gray belt with a circular pattern wrapped around his waist with a leather pouch attached to the back. "So his favorite has decided to come out and play," the man said mockingly. His murderous gaze seemed to be focused on Shoto. "Who are you talking about?" Shoto said, his skin crawling under this villain's gaze. "Stand aside, or I will be forced to put you down." "Put me down. Put me down." The man roared, cackling maniacally. "Like a dog, I guess I was the dog, discarded, begging for scraps, but you know that just made me hungry. Ravenous." He lurched forward. "We will see what happens when nothing is left of you but ashes." "We don't have time for this," Ryuko yelled. Her hands were behind her back so she could hide them glowing. You should know who you are facing, especially if you plan and do so with so many piercings. The villain's eyes widened as he screamed in pain as all his piercings were suddenly ripped out of his skin. He shot a wild blast of flames towards Rico, who didn't even flinch as Shoto stomped his foot, and a dense pillar of ice came erupting out, pushing it through the wild attack and striking the villain in the face, sending him tumbling back. "I am going to kill you both," he yelled, stumbling to his feet. This time, his fire blast was more concentrated as he thrust both hands forward in a focused attack as blood poured from his face. Shoto unleashed his flames, they were wild and less controlled than the villain's. He suddenly cut his fire and sent a massive wave of ice that threatened to engulf the entire clearing. The villain sneered as his flames suddenly turned blue. Shoto grabbed Rico and dived for cover. It had been a super move Shoto had been thinking of after his battle with Izuku during the sports festival, and the explosion from super hot air meeting super cold. Rico yanked the villain's hands down as the clearing exploded. The forest was silent momentarily. The third group of villains was thrown to the ground from the explosion. As they got to their feet, they were suddenly assaulted by a group of students. The children came in hard and without mercy as they were all at their limits after today. With ruthless efficiency, they just rained down their attacks. Their thrill of victory quickly soured when their targets melted into goo at their feet. The last group was almost at the evac point when Izuku and Himiko came crashing through the trees next to them. Izuku's shoulder blocked Magni, sending her flying. He continued his momentum and tackled his target to the ground. Spinner turned to stab Izuku, only to find the blade kicked from his grasp by Himiko. Toga ran and tackled her to the ground. For a brief instant, Spinner thought of that old meme where three costumed heroes pointed at each other. "Give me back, Bakugo," Izuku yelled as he punched the villain. Himiko had told him was Mr. Compress. He was dressed in a dark orange shirt with an upturned collar, a green striped bolo necktie, an oval-shaped azure brooch around his neck, a black waistcoat, and black dress pants. He wore knee-high white boots with wedged heels and black toe caps, plain dark red gloves, a tall brown top hat with a red ribbon tied around it, and a pale feather on the left side. He wears a black balaclava with a hole in his mouth and eyes, and on top of it, he wears a white mask. He also has a dark yellow, double-breasted overcoat with buttoned shoulder tabs and a high collar that reaches below his knees. In addition to this, he carries a silver walking stick with a gold handle. Mr. Compress could absorb the blow, though it was still excruciating. He quickly took his walking stick and jammed it into Izuku's stomach, forcing the boy off him. Spinner was quick to act with another blade and drove it into Izuku's other shoulder before twisting and yanking it out violently. Izuku screamed and stumbled back, one arm was broken and the other was nearly useless. He managed to duck under another attack from Spinner, only to get hit across the face once again by Mr. Compress's walking stick. He saw the villain move in to grab him. Izuku dropped down and swept Mr. Compress's legs out from under him, and he rolled back out of the way from another attack from Spinner. He spun on his heel when Spinner tried to press his advantage, pushing one for all higher. He kicked the Spinner's chest, sending the villain flying. Suddenly, the twice struck as a dozen villains ran and dogpiled on Izuku, raining down punches and kicks from all angles. "We are sorry, no, we ain't," they all said in unison. "Stay down, get up and fight. Do not kill him twice, he is, after all, a bonus target," Mr. Compress said, getting to his feet. "Now, my dear boy, be so kind as to surrender, or one of your classmates will suffer a gruesome fate." Twice, he held up the battered head of Izuku so he could look at Mr. Compress. In his fingers, he held 3 turquoise marbles. Himiko and Toga were about to run in and stab Mr. Compress when Magni appeared. Magni grabbed both of their heads and slammed them together, knocking the real one out and destroying the clone. "What the hell is wrong with you, girl? I found him, we should leave him," came a call from the forest as more clones of Twice went in, carrying Dabi. "We need to run, let's stay and fight." Izuku felt himself falling into blackness, he couldn't go on, he was done. He opened one eye that wasn't swollen shut, glaring at the villains before him. Out of his eye, he saw a black raven-shaped shadow creeping around the forest edge. He smiled at the villains, his mouth a crimson maw. "How about I let you live? Unlike what I did to Muscular," he turned and spit out some blood. "Izuku, jump." A voice yelled from the forest as Ochaco burst, swinging a massive tree trunk like a baseball bat. "Holy shit, so cool." The Twice clones yelled as they splattered into goo as they were swept away from the blow. Mr. Compress yelled as he was knocked into the air by a dark shadow appearing under his feet. He barely made it even with the tree line when Ejiro came leaping out with a somersaulting tail slam, sending the villain crashing back to the ground. The 3 turquoise marbles went tumbling away. "Break them open," Izuku yelled as he tried to run forward. He stumbled, extending his broken arm. The black tendrils exploded again, grabbing 2 marbles and yanking them to him. Mr. Compress went to snag the third, only for the firewall to make him yank his hand back. The marble glowed and flew through the air into Rico's hand. "Oh dear," he said dramatically. Suddenly, the one in Ryuko's hand exploded and Nomu emerged, batting Shoto away and grabbing Ryuko by the throat. Izuku broke the ones he yanked to him and Kendo and Tetsu emerged. Bageru came leaping out of the forest, "Get our fucking hands off of her." As his blade came down and severed the Nomu's arm clean off, the boy landed and spun and with another blade got the Nomu up the middle with a deep slash. Denki emerged and leaped. He landed on the Nomu's back and touched the monster's exposed brain. "Fry, you son of bitch." He sneered. He plunged a metal rod into the creature's skull and unleashed his electricity. The villains made a break for it, with Mr. Compress smiling as a fought marble fell from his mouth. "Hate to cut and run," he chuckled. "Then, by all means, stay for the encore," said Ijiro as he came crashing out swinging a metal bat that came crashing down with a thunderous crack on the villain's arm. Mr. Compress screamed and the marble tumbled free. Ijiro spun and brought the bat down on the marble and out sprung Bakugo's unconscious body. For a split second, everyone froze and then the heroes made a mad dash for their classmates. A massive torrent of blue flame made them dive for cover. Through the flames, they saw the charred skin villain that Shoto had fought lift Bakugo by his hair. "Move and he dies," the villain snapped. The villains retreated behind their leader. The heroes watched as Bakugo was dragged into the portal. As the fire villain yanks him into the portal, Izuku, on the verge of collapse, howls in frustration. The black tendrils once again fly into the closing portal. He blindly feels them grab someone he pulls with all his might. Out of the closing portal comes Ragdoll. As the portal snaps shut, Izuku passed out face first in the dirt. The bar with no name. The portal snapped shut and Bakugo immediately fired off an explosion, blowing Dabi away from him. He spun around and ducked under a knife strike by Spinner, threw his hands forward and blasted him in the chest, launching him over the bar top and crashing into perfectly manicured bottles. He turned and landed a kick on Magni, doubling her over and causing her to drop Toga. He was about to fire off another blast as he jumped away for Shigaraki, who charged at him when his world went dark courtesy of a hit to the back of the head. "Well, he certainly is a spirited soul," Compress said with a chuckle, looking at his cane critically, seeing if it was damaged from delivering the knockout blow. "That's it. I am going to kill him." Dabi roared. "We will do no such thing," Shigaraki growled. "It is bad enough that you guys got your asses handed to you to the point that not only did you only bring back one of the targets, one was snatched out of your hands as you walked through a portal. Where is Muscular? Where is Mustard?" He looked around the room. "Pathetic, Vanguard Action Squad, more like barely competent NPCs. Secure him so he doesn't get away," he said, pointing to Bakugo. "And you lost 4 high ends on top of it. You are lucky I don't dust you right here and now." He turned and stomped off. "Fucking noobs." Toga. She awoke in her room. She got to her feet and turned on the light. She stumbled over and looked in the mirror. Quickly, almost desperately, she removed her shirt. She had shut her eyes, practically terrified that the mark wouldn't be there. Slowly, she opened her eyes, they went to her shoulder, and his mark was there. "He can't love a villain, but he could love a girl who tried to change," she repeated his words. "Love, he can love me, he said he didn't care about my quirk." "He is lying." Self-doubt screamed. "He doesn't love you, he can't love you." "But that kiss, that was a real kiss, with real passion," her hope retorted. "His eyes, they didn't lie. We know when they are lying." "You're so stupid, you always fall for it," self-doubt railed. "Always saying this time, it is real, and every time it is wrong." Self-doubt hugged itself tight. "I am tired of always being hurt. But this can be different." Hope yelled, "I promise." "If you are wrong?" Self-doubt whispered. "He looked good covered in blood, and if I am wrong, then we will make sure everyone bleeds." Hope responded. "Fine." Self-doubt shouted. "One final chance. How are we going to do it?" She needed a plan to get out of here and get back to her love. She giggled at the thought and sighed wistfully, the back of her hand against her forehead slowly trailing down her face to her lips. The memory of his touch, lips, the fire and the passion. The promise that he was about to lay her there on the very earth and ravage her. Would he even strip her nude? No, he would have just torn open her shirt, exposing her breasts so he could mark those as his. Her hand trailed down to her breasts, giving them a light pinch. Then he would push her white cotton panties to the side, exposing her most private area to him. Her hand began to trail lower. A whimper to be gentle that it was her first time. He would growl and tell her how if she wanted gentle, she should have submitted to someone else. A gasp and a shudder as he made her into a woman, his woman. A flash of pain followed by a trip to the gates of heaven as he molded her to fit him. She would try to beg him to be tender, but her pleasure wouldn't allow her to form words. Without mercy, he would claim her, turning her onto her stomach to mount her like an animal in heat. That was all she could be with him, submitting to his every desire as he marked her with his seed. His mouth marks her neck again and again. Then only then would he take her gently and tender as all the others watched, including that dumb bitch. She would watch and pleasure herself as Himi's mate made love to her in front of all of them. Maybe she would let him mate with them, after all, such a big, strong man needed more than one mate and there was that one that was in love with. Knock, knock. Who the fuck is it? She yelled, being ripped from her fantasy. Himi? It's Magni. Himiko mumbled to herself as she adjusted her clothing and opened the door. Magni stood there looking at Himiko, almost examining her. Himiko raised an eyebrow. Well? I need to talk to you, Magni said. Himiko stepped to the side and allowed Magni to step in. Magni looked at the bed, immediately thought better, and sat on a chair in the corner. What is going on, Himiko? Magni said, you were acting weird on the raid, then at the end, you were acting super weird, then a copy of you comes crashing in with that. Magni was about to disparage, but the look in Himiko's eyes stopped her. That boy. That boy. As you put it, he is my boyfriend and loves me, Magni sighed and put her head in her hands. And I am going to leave to be with him. Himiko, not this again. Magni lamented. Don't get wrapped up in the fantasy, what makes you think this will end any different? Because he marked me, Himiko showed Magin her shoulder and the bite mark as if that explained everything. When he kissed me, I could tell. Wait, you kissed him? Magni was shocked. When? Did you stop to kiss someone while we were fighting? Himiko nodded her head vigorously, making Magni groan. What would you do when he finds out about your quirk? Or what you have done? He said he didn't care about my quirk or what I have done. He said he couldn't love a girl who was a villain, but he could love a girl who was trying to do good. So I will do good and he will love me. Himiko's voice trembled with passion and hope. And you are going to come with me. Wait, what? Magni stuttered. He is good, I know it. Himiko slammed her fist into her palm. They will accept me and you, we are bringing Twice and maybe Spinner. Himiko tapped her chin, but fuck the rest. They are going to arrest us all. Are you even more insane? Magni bemoaned. Magni, I love you, you accepted me, and I accept you. Himiko walked over and crouched before her friend. Crusty Lips don't give two shits about us, he doesn't follow Stain, all he is doing is cosplaying at being a supervillain. He will let every one of us die. Burnt Face is all obsessed with his bullshit. They will toss every one of us aside to get what they want, and what they want isn't going to help us anyway. They want to change things, well, Krusty, I mean Shigaraki does. Magni protested. The what? Himiko said. Who is going to run shit him? Burnt Face or that guy in the speaker? We might be on top in the end, but on top of what? You just want to see people bleed. Magni pointed out, are you telling me you want more? Himiko nodded, yes, I want love, I want happiness, I want to be accepted. I don't know how that will work, but Izuku has a better chance of making all that happen than those other clowns. We are all fucked up in the head, we all need help, and they are not going to give us that. For the first time in years, I see a better way. And if you're wrong? Then I will bleed them all out, bath in their blood. Himiko said menacingly. Is this what you want, Magni? She gestured to the room. Is this really what you want? No, Magni hung her head. I want to make them accept me. Then let's fucking do that, Himiko said. I want them to fucking see me and come begging me to take them back and then I will fucking spit on them and laugh my motherfucking ass off. Not by surrounding ourselves with people who would kill us so that they can play League of Legends longer. Magni laughed. I mean, I heard he mains Yasu, that should tell you all you need. Holy shit, he is a toxic douche. Magni laughed. I should tell you, you're fucking nuts, that this is going to backfire, but Magni and Himiko both knew who they were talking about. For Himiko, it was her parents, for Magni, all those who made fun of her for being a woman with how she looked. Love is a motherfucker, Himiko said. Love is going to change everything. This is the fucking dumbest thing we can do, Magni smiled at her friend. Let's fucking do it. How are we going to do it? First, I need to convince Twice I am not leaving him here with these assholes. If he is going to be surrounded by assholes, it is going to be a better version of asshole. Himiko smiled. Do you still not that cute shorty with the computer skills? Twice. Jin Bubegawara loved the moment he woke up, it was the perfect time for a fraction of a second. Undoubtedly, he was the original, and then it would be gone. But for that fraction of a second, the world was beautiful. Like many others who had fallen into the life of villainy, it could be traced back to problematic quirk awakening. A lack of support or help, a world that just turned away from those problems, letting them fall where they may, whether it be parents, teachers, the police, or heroes. Himiko and her need for blood, a quirk counselor's inability to do anything when, after they report to the parents that their daughter needs to drink blood, they never see the girl again. Jin's quirk is called Double, but he has a problem with it. This quirk enables Jin to create a precise replica of any person or object, whether living or not. However, when he duplicates a person, he loses control over them because the clones have their autonomy, personalities, and abilities identical to the original. So, the first time it manifested who was the original and who was the clone, over 9 days, he struggled and fought against himself physically, mentally, and emotionally. No one knew where his family or parents were, but they weren't there. In the end, what was left was a broken and mentally damaged person. Hence, he uses double-speak, praising and insulting someone in the same sentence. This juxtaposition is part of a mental instability Jin would come to embrace as a villain. He believed understanding your own identity is the most essential aspect of life. Jin's identity crisis drove him to insanity. The only thing sometimes holding twice together, literally at times, is his mask. Without it, Jin suffers more heavily from his psychosis. It is akin to dissociative disorder. While masked, he would contradict himself, but he was seemingly okay with it. Without his mask, the personalities would argue with each other, causing Jin to panic and threaten to split, but with his mask, he could be whole. Jin had given up on being Jin. He was twice now, that was what everyone called him. While mostly everyone did, he had surrendered the name of Jin to embrace this new life. He hadn't heard his name in so long till she asked him what his name was. Twice, he responded. Wow, your parents named you twice, that is fucked up, she quipped. He paused and thought before saying, Jin twice. Nice to meet you Jin. I'm Himiko or Himi if you like, she said with a toothy grin. Hello Himiko. That led him to the now awake, sitting in his room, listening to her tell him about this insane genius plan. Insane genius. This will never work it is going to work. I will help you I will rat you out. I am bringing you with me, Jin, Himiko said. Before he could reply, she pulled his mask up and pressed her finger to her lips. I am not going to leave you with these assholes. I am going to take you to a better class of asshole. We won't know who the real one is the fake one will be left behind for sure. He lamented once he could freely move his lips. Let me worry about that. Himiko whispered. Do you trust me? Yes kind of, he was shocked they agreed on something. Truthfully, they both believed that Dabi and Shigaraki would kill them to get what they wanted. But then it wouldn't be that bad, the dead one was the fake cause the original was too bright to get killed. Spinner. I think you are wrong, Himiko, he replied. I won't rat you out, but. Who is the only hero worthy of killing Stain? Himiko asked, rubbing her forehead. All Might, of course, he responded, wondering if maybe she had suffered some mental damage. Who did Stain say had potential? That kid, the one you are claiming the one that is your boyfriend. He responded, sensing pain was in his future if he continued with his initial statement. Krusty never says anything good about All Might, does he? Spinner opened his mouth to retort, but he couldn't. He stopped and tried to think hard about it. Now, should we stay with the guy who doesn't seem to like All Might or the person Mr. Stain said was worthy, or should we hang out with those two instead? The system is corrupt false heroes, he protested. I hear you, but do you think Krusty will bring about real heroes? Himiko raised her eyebrow. Or should we infiltrate hero society and ensure that the person Mr. Stain said was worthy is protected, and if he is putting on a false front, we should take him out? Spinner couldn't argue with that. You better be right about this, Himiko. Of course I am. She winked, quickly leaving the room. Itsuki Bakugo. His eyes snapped open, he was cold, wet, tied to fucking chair, and his arms were bound, with his palms placed squarely in his chest. He would blast through himself if he wanted to fire off an explosion to break free. Not that he could generate enough sweat to spark a fart at the moment. He struggles to remember how he got here, what he can remember pisses him off, there is the fuzzy memory of that damn Deku looking towards him. He was so desperate, looking at him like he needed to save him. I don't need you looking down on me you fucking Deku. He roared to no one in particular. I am going to get out of here beat all these assholes up and show you who the best is. He thrashed against his restraints violently and suddenly ice-cold water fell from the ceiling dousing him, the shock made his muscles tense and made him even more pissed. The door to his cell opened and in walked a crazy-looking girl with ash blonde hair and a stupid smile, she was carrying a tray with what looked like food. Who the fuck are you? He yelled, let me out of here so I can kick your ass. She stopped and blinked at him. Are you fucking stupid? Kitsuki froze. What the hell did you just say? Are you fucking stupid? She said louder. I wonder if those explosions have made him deaf. I can hear just fine you stupid bitch. He continued to yell. Do you know who the fuck I am? The guy from the memes, she responded cheerfully, Kitsuki growled. She closed the door, I brought you food. I don't want any damn food. Shove it up your ass. He began to thrash again. It is all for love, it is for love, she whispered. He went to yell again, but she shoved a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in his mouth. His muffled response was music to her ears. Now listen here, idiot, who in their right mind would let you out so they could get beat up? He glared at her, trying to will her death with his mind. But I will let you out. He stared at her and his thrashing stopped. If you cooperate. He wanted to yell, but instead, he thought he could use this to his advantage. He looked at the cup of water on the tray and she held it up, allowing him to drink. He choked down the sandwich. Why would I cooperate with a bunch of villains? Because we are going to switch sides and you are going to our ticket to do so. She grinned. No one uses Katsuki sandwich inserted. Now listen, the heroes have no idea where you are. Krusty is going to try and convert you because of that little meme creation from the sports festival, Himiko said, holding the water and staring down at him. Now you can either escape or wait to be rescued, princess. What is it going to be? He looked at the water. Once he could talk, escape. Good, now, do you have the phone number for my Izuku? Why would you need the number for that stupid Deku? As the words flew from his mouth, he felt a feeling of murderous intent wash over him. She was no longer smiling, that intent radiated out of her. Her eyes narrowed and suddenly, a blade was in her hand. He went to say something and that same blade was in his mouth, he froze. That is my beloved. You are talking about Worm, she said. If you call him Deku again, I am going to cut your tongue out and make you eat it. I don't need you whole, understand what I mean. Blink twice if you understand. Itsuki felt the blade push in more. He thought she would do it, what the hell was this beloved Deku thing about? He blinked twice. I am trying to show that I can be a good girl so I can have my love, but I am not there yet and if I have to carve pieces from you to get there, well she shrugged. I am sure he will understand. What the fuck is going on? This bitch is insane. Now I need to get a hold of him so we can work out a deal where we all get what we want, except Krusty and Burnt Face, she said. The sooner you do that, the sooner you get out of here, capiche? The Kugo blinked twice, Himiko giggled and pulled the knife out of his mouth. Now, do you have that number or not? Izuku. The familiar smell of disinfectant and a hospital room greeted him, followed by murmured voices. As he struggled to open his eyes, he recognized his mother and Yagi. Water, he croaked. Izuku young Midoriya. Suddenly, they were at his side, his mother lifting water to his lips and allowing him to sip. Bakugo. He said hopefully, the look in his mentor's eyes was all the answer he needed. They are still trying to locate him, Yagi said. Fortunately, Ms. Yoirozu was able to plant a tracking device on one of the Nomu that attacked the camp. The range is limited, but we are doing all we can. Izuku didn't know if he wanted to cry, scream, or what. He looked at his severely bandaged arms. How bad is it? That doesn't matter right now, Inko said, stroking his cheek. How bad? He demanded. There has been some permanent damage to your hands, you should be able to regain over 90% with therapy. Recovery girl will be by now that you are awake, Yagi said. Inko had flinched back some when he raised his voice. I'm sorry, Mom, I shouldn't have yelled. He fought back the tears. I just wasn't strong enough, I tried, I tired, but it was just too much. It is all right, young Midoriya, Yagi reassured him. You did all you could and even more so. You fought so far beyond what anyone could have asked of you. Izuku, Inko whispered. Why are you pushing yourself so hard, honey? Inko looked at Izuku, her eyes wet and pleading. Because I have to, Mom, Izuku looked at Mr. Yagi. Mom, I never developed a quirk. Mr. Yagi coughed up blood. What are you talking about? Inko said concerned, I saw the sports festival. You see, Mom, I have All Might's quirk. All Might's quirk is special, it can be passed on from one person to another and he gave it to me, Inko was speechless. She didn't know if he was lying, had suffered brain damage, or what. She looked into his eyes and knew that wasn't. Show her. He said, looking at Mr. Yagi. Young Midoriya, he protested. This is my quirk now, my secret. If I am going to break myself, then she needs to know. We have been lying and dancing around each other for too long, he looked at Inko. I love you, Mom, his tears couldn't be held back. I know you want me to stop, but I can't. Now, please show her. Suddenly, in a puff of smoke, Mr. Yagi was gone and there stood All Might. Inko fell back. Thankfully, there was a chair to catch her. You're All Might. She whispered. With a puff of smoke and coughing of blood, Mr. Yagi was back. I am he began as he told Inko everything from his injury to looking for a successor to his encounter with Izuku. Why didn't you tell me? She said, looking at her son. Izuku opened his mouth but then stopped. I felt this chasm between us, we danced around it for so long that I didn't know how to cross it. I also know that you think I should stop and maybe give this to someone else. Inko nodded. But I can't, for my entire life, I have dreamed of becoming a hero and now, after all this, I realize that I have to do this a different way. I can't be All Might, I have to be me. He looked to his mentor. I can never be you, I realize that now, everything I am doing is almost like a tribute. The costume, the way I fight, the reckless abandon that I charge in with. I failed to see the reckless abandon part, he said. Because you do that, but it is because you can, Izuku responded. You took to one for all immediately, yet you still went and trained for years and years in America before you came and made your debut. So all I have ever seen is the trained confident All Might. That is what I have been copying. Izuku looked down. All my life, I have been looking at other people's quirks, thinking about how they work, how they don't work, limitations, and how to overcome them. With one for all, I keep thinking about how you use it, how to do it like you, and I can't do it like you. All Might nodded, he understood what Izuku was saying. No one saw the stumbling All Might, all they saw was the symbol of peace. Izuku was right. He needed to find his way, make one for all his, it was his now. I am sorry for keeping this from you, Inko, he said as he bowed before her. You need to do better, she said, staring at All Might, whose head lifted to her words. He has been trying to be you, those other children are breaking themselves to follow after you. You need to be better, not just for Izuku but for all of them. You are correct, I have failed young Midoriya and his classmates, he walked over and sat down. I will do better, I swear. Inko touched Izuku's fingertips, I won't ask you to stop, but I will make you swear that you will come home to me. I love you so much, Izuku, and I don't want anything more to come between us. I am your mother, and nothing will ever change that. I love you too, Mom, Izuku said. He had never wished for instant healing so much in his life, as he only wanted to hug and be hugged by his mom. The room fell into silence until the door opened, and in walked Chio, Aka Recovery Girl, accompanied by Nezu. Before Recovery Girl could even speak. I know, Izuku said. I know now, I understand it finally. I won't say that I won't ever be this hurt again, but it won't be because I was being pig-headed and stubborn. Just one more time, he hung his head. One more time, she said, kissing his head. Nezu was about to speak when Izuku's phone rang, drawing everyone's attention. Inko held up his phone. Unknown caller. Answer it, Izuku said. I have no idea who it can be, Inko answered the call, putting it on speaker. Hello? He said hesitantly. Oh my darling, it is you. A girl's voice came over the speaker, catching everyone by surprise. I was afraid that I may have been given the wrong number. But I am so glad it is you. Did you miss me? I missed you. All I can think about is that kiss and how I long to be with you. Eyebrows raised, Inko glared at her son, who blushed and coughed. Himiko, how did you get my number? From that blonde asshole, Batago, buttwhoop. Bakugo. Izuku said quickly as Nezu pulled out his phone and typed furiously. Yeah, him, she giggled, I almost had to cut out his tongue. He kept calling you that horrible word, but he understood, so he isn't as dumb as he looks. See, I am trying to be a good girl for you. More strange looks were sent his way. I appreciate that, Himiko. Can I maybe talk to him? Nope. Why? Because I am not where he is, silly boy, again she giggled. I thought it was all a dream till I woke up and saw your mark upon my body. Oh, how I miss you, Izuku. This conversation was going to be the death of him, he knew it. I miss you too, she squealed with delight. If you could tell me where Bakugo is, it would go a long way to helping me prove that you are becoming a good girl. Nope. She responded. I want to make a deal. Is there anyone listening that can make a deal with me? I can, Nezu said, coming towards the bed. How did you know? Speakerphone and I have good hearing, Himiko said. Who are you? Nezu, principal of UA. What is it that you want? Some of my comrades and I are seeking asylum. We will bring you buttwhoop and in return, we get all of our crimes wiped clean and get a chance to live a new life. I want to be with my darling. Himiko paused. You attacked my students and now you want us to take you in. Yup, you see, we were misinformed by the douche that runs this 2-bit popsicle stand and well, I fell in love with my darling and after he asked me out, I have to be with him, Himiko sighed. But he said I have to be a good girl, that even though I had done bad if I could be a good girl, he could love me. I see, Nezu raised an eyebrow, looking at the blushing mess that was Izuku. What else can you offer? Well, Krusty or Shigaraki's location, along with Kurogiri, that teleporter, Dabi, and I have information on who is running this. I think I understand why you are doing this, but what about the others, Nezu asked, his curiosity piqued. Magni wants to be accepted, she got shunned and treated like shit, so when that happens, you try and make the life you can. You see, Shigaraki is right, things are fucked up and need to be better, but he is such a douchebag that all he wants to do is burn it down with nothing better to take its place. It sounded great, the changing shit part, Mr. Staines, who I believed, all those false heroes. Same with Spinner. There was a shudder at the mention of Stain. Twice, he is good, but like me, no one was there to help him when he got broken, and he is broken. We will not do jail. We want help. You and at least one other of your group follow Stain's teachings, why should I trust you? Nezu replied. Stain was right and wrong, too many heroes are doing this for the wrong reasons, but my Izuku, he is the real thing. If he can love a girl like me, then I know he can be a real hero, and maybe the next me won't have to be broken." Himiko went silent. "I will make this easy, you grant us asylum, and I will bring you back your student unharmed, 4 members of the league, the name of the guy selling all us the bill of goods to get us to help Krusty, you know the guy who got all those people for that little attack on your school, and the biggest secret of them all, who is calling the shots." "Deal?" Nezu said, smiling. "Can I trust him, Izuku?" Himiko said warily. "I trust him," Izuku said. "Himiko, if he doesn't hold up his end, then we run away, alright?" "You would run away with me? Bust me out and take off?" "Yes." "Okay, I trust you, Izuku, we will be at the south gates of UA at midnight, you betray us, and well, shit is going to get real bad real fast." The phone went dead. Nezu picked up his phone. Well. The call was being bounced around. "Honey, please explain." Inko said wide-eyed, staring at her son. "So I ended up knocking her away from attacking Tsu and Ochaco, and in the struggle, I bit her shoulder, again with more eyebrows. I was my only option at the time, but long story short, she started spouting this crazy stuff that I was her boyfriend and how I marked her. But then later she asked me if I could ever love a girl like her. And mom, the look in her eyes, she was drowning, so desperate for a helping hand, I told her the truth. I could, but not if she was a villain, that if she had done bad but tried to do good and was a good girl, then I could." Izuku looked at Nezu. "Please, sir, yes, I get that she is crazy, but she is so desperate for acceptance for love that she is willing to risk everything, and her friends are just as desperate for help and acceptance that they are willing to follow her to me, for that." Nezu looked at Izuku, "And will you leave if I go back on my word?" "Yes," Izuku's gaze never wavered. "Let me be honest, I trust you, sir, All Might trust you. And if someone who wants help so badly throws everything away only for you to betray them, then you are not worthy of that trust." "Okay," Nezu smiled, "but you are going to help with them?" Izuku nodded. "Good. I got to get things sorted out and the proper paperwork done before they show up." Nezu went to leave. "Sir," Izuku called out. "Yes, Mr. Midoriya." "Muscular?" He saw All Might and Inko's expression drop. "He will never bother anyone again," Nezu replied as he and Recovery Girl exited the room. Inko looked over at Izuku. "Are you alright, honey?" "He was a monster, mom, he was trying to kill a kid at the camp. He killed the kid's parents. They used to be pro-heroes. When he found out, he was excited about killing him. If he had gotten to anyone else, he would have killed them without a single thought. The world is better off without him in it." Izuku looked away. "It doesn't feel good, but..." Inko sat on the edge of the bed and pulled him into a tender hug, stroking his head. They sat there silently. All Might leave the room feeling like he was intruding. Mother and son stood like that till he fell asleep from Recovery Girl's healing. Ochaco's apartment. "Do you think he will wake up soon?" Ochaco said absently, pushing around some food on her plate. Ochaco was surprised when Tsu showed up at her door with a carryout, but thankful that her friend had come to see her after everything that had happened. "I hope so, Ribbit," Tsu responded. He was so beat up and then he had that black stuff around his arm. The paramedics were surprised he was still breathing, Kiro. He was so exhausted that they were saying the adrenaline was the only thing keeping him going as long as he did. That his body shut down because it couldn't handle anymore. Ochaco sighed, finally taking a bite of the food Tsu had brought to her. After that first bite, her stomach told her to eat or else. "So, will you tell me what happened between you two?" Tsu asked, breaking the silence. "He said something to you in the clearing when the villains started to retreat. I could see in your face that it bothered you, Ribbit." Ochaco set the plate aside and pulled her knees up towards her chin. "When we were doing the test of courage, he confessed, told me he liked me, that I was the first girl he ever loved, I was his best friend, he wanted to be with me. I thought that was the plan." Tsu said, confused. "I friend-zoned him." "You did what?" "I hit him with, I want to focus on becoming heroes, maybe after we graduate." "Are you fucking stupid?" Ochaco's head shot up. "Do you not understand how good of a guy he is? That other girls like him and didn't go after him is because they saw how he looked at you? We all thought you liked him." "I do like him." Ochaco protested. "I don't know why I did it. It was everything I wanted him to say and then it flew out of my mouth. I just want to tell him I fucked up, I panicked." "He looked really hurt, Ochaco," Tsu said, calming down. She picked up the empty plates and walked over to the fridge, putting the rest of the food she brought away for Ochaco to eat later. "I won't lie to you, I am one of those girls." Ochaco's eyes widened. "I like him and I like you, but if he tells you no, I will ask him out. The other girls might wait a bit, but I wouldn't count on you having much of a grace period after they find out you rejected him and then tried to get him back. I am disappointed in you, Ochaco." "Wait, you like him, but you like me?" Like me," Ochaco stammered out. "I like who I like," Tsu said. "If you like girls, let me know." But I want Izuku, he can give me tadpoles in the future you cannot. Sue. Ochaco blushed, coughed, and stammered. I speak my mind, you know that. Sue stopped at the door to the apartment. You messed up, Ochaco, and you hurt Izuku. Even if he doesn't take you back and accepts my confession, I hope we can still be friends. With that, Sue left. Ochaco stared at the door, it was a lot to process. Sue like her, and Izuku. Was Sue hoping that the three of them? She closed her eyes, she could still see his face, the pain evident. Why couldn't you have said yes? She could still feel that lightning dancing from his hand to hers. Oh fuck, please don't let it be too late. She pleaded silently. Itsuki Bakugo. When the door opened, he saw that crazy bitch again, but this time she wasn't alone, some weirdo in a blue bodysuit was with her. This guy going to get us what we want? No way this guy will be any good. Yup, he is our ticket to getting the fuck out of here. Himiko's sadistic glare was now fixed on him. Don't worry, he won't trouble you, twice. She pulled out a knife and ran it across her tongue. He likes having a tongue and testicles. Itsuki growled in anger. You are lucky I don't get out of here and blow all you bastards up. Himiko skipped to him. The blade of the knife tapped his crotch. Listen, I already talked with Nezu. Bakugo had already frozen when the knife tapped him, but now his eyes were even wider at the mention of Nezu. Listen, how would you like to do both? Get out of here and blow the guys that attacked your school into the middle of next week. And you won't even have to worry about being used as bait for the heroes to rescue. You get to walk out of here and blow shit up. I am listening. Himiko. It wasn't hard, a simple internet outage at the right time was all it took to distract Krusty, while Team 1 made their way to the exit and out into the night. Himiko was expecting blonde bozos 2 to 6 to put up more of a fight, but it was surprisingly easy to convince them to stay behind and blow shit the fuck up. Like maybe he needed to see someone because convincing them to stay behind and wreck shit was as simple as convincing a bunch of villains to switch sides based off one girl's interaction during a kidnapping with a boy who she stabbed, but then he bit her, marking her as his, and everything just flipped on its head then, and he said that if she was good he could love her, then they kissed like a real. They'd kiss the kind where if it was in a movie the camera would zoom and the orchestra would come in, the type that makes the panties drop, and oh how they had fallen till that damn frog with those sexy legs had come in all kicking and stuff. But then they had to run away, but she didn't want to run, so now she had to get back to the boy, but she couldn't leave these other people behind because they just needed to find that movie kiss so they would get better, and Krusty was no follower of Mr. Stain. He said he wanted to change things, but all that really meant was putting himself on top, not really helping anyone and letting all fall apart. Like his quirk. More on that later. Where was she? Oh yay, then there was Burnt Face, and he was just there for his bullshit. Still, he had been recruited by the speaker box, and that meant he wasn't in this for any other reason than what that guy had promised him. There was that wacko doctor who wanted to get samples of them. He made those Nomu, but the Nomu were with the speaker box guy, who was the real person in charge, and he had to be a quirk thief. Everyone in the underground heard the rumors of the quirk thief, and she knew he had to be the quirk thief because they were sent to bring back that lady's quirk, not the lady. They had to bring her back to deliver to speaker box, which meant he was the quirk thief. People didn't like to talk about him, but she knew his name, the quack had said it once, all for one. And well fuck that noise, so after they had a twice brawl for all till there was one left standing, they made their escape, simple, right? To keep the blonde dipshit from wreaking their plans, they used quick sedatives once they were outside, and they could carry him like a burrito to the meet, burrito. Hey, does anyone want to stop for a burrito on the way? I want one. Himiko said. We shouldn't stop, Spinner sighed. Burritos rule only if it is a chimichanga. Was Twice's opinion. Oh, a shrimp burrito sounds so good, Magni said, licking her lips. Bro's delicious. Cool, let's grab a burrito on the way, Himiko said, skipping ahead. The exchange. Are you sure about this, Himi? Magni asked as they looked at the back gates of UA. No, but I have faith, she responded. I have faith in Izuku. And if it goes tits up Twice, you know what to do. Make them all fucking pay, burn this motherfucker down. Twice seemed surprised by his response. See, you can agree, Himiko giggled at him. Okay, guys, I am going out there. Watch for my signal, she turned to Magni. You don't have to go with me, I can turn into you and carry him myself. Hell no, Himiko, Magni said, adjusting the sack of potatoes over her shoulder, otherwise known as Bakugo. You're my ride or die, if this goes sideways, I am with you till the wheels fall off. Himiko could only smile and kiss Magni on the cheek as they stepped out of concealment and made their way to the back gate. Himiko was a little nervous, self-doubt and worry crept into her mind. What if he was lying to her? What if this was all a trap? Not only was she risking herself but the others as well. Having others follow you into the unknown with nothing but your words and willingness to believe in you was a heavy weight to bear. She closed her eyes momentarily and could envision warm, beautiful, soft green eyes looking back at her. Words that made her heart soar and soul dare to dream. She let loose a shuddering breath. One last time, she would risk everything on the most insane, fickle, deceptive, confusing, undefinable thing. Love. Once they were within 25 yards of the gate, it opened, and standing there was a short white-furred anamorphic creature of some sort in a business suit. The pro-heroes Midnight and Snipe, as well as the one person who made running impossible, also helped to ease her somewhat, All Might. Himiko and Magni stopped moving. Himiko took a step forward, and Magni looked around nervously. She pointed at the creature, "You must be Nezu." "I am," Nezu said, stepping forward. "Then you must be Himiko, where are your other associates?" "Hanging back in case you decide to screw us over," Himiko responded, looking over to All Might. "You here to take us in?" "Not unless that is what is called for," All Might responded. "I have to ask, what have you done to young Bakuo?" "Oh, him, he is just asleep, he is too loud and stupid for us to make our way here without him messing all this up." Magni walked forward, holding out Bakugo. All Might met her and took the boy from Magni, walking him back and placing him behind the wall. "You have your student back. Where are our pardons?" "He is in good shape, all things considering," a woman's voice said from behind the wall. "Information," Nezu said as Midnight handed him a folder. "Bring it over, let Magni take a look while you and I talk," Himiko called out. "You can bring All Might with you, but only All Might." The groups meet, All Might hand the folder to Magni, who starts reading. "Here is the location of Shigaraki, with him are Kurogiri, Dabi, and Mr. Compress. There are no Nomus there. They are with the quirk thief and the doctor." She noticed that All Might seemed to stiffen at the words quirk thief. "Have you met this quirk thief?" Nezu said. His voice and smile were cheerful and almost playful, but not to Himiko. This was just a mask that Nezu was wearing. "No, he normally talks through a speaker box, but rumors in the underground have been forever about the quirk thief. He is the guy in charge," Shigaraki answers to him, "the doctor who makes those Nomu." "I heard him say his name," Himiko smiled. "All for one." A multitude of emotions played across All Might. He wanted us to bring the pussycat girl to him, but the way it was relayed to us was to bring her quirk to him. That's how I knew it was the quirk thief. "How did you come to work for him?" Nezu asked, watching Himiko closely. "We were recruited by a broker named Jiren, we didn't go to work for him. We went to work for Shigaraki because we thought Mr. Stain was part of his little League of Villains." Himiko paused. "I get it now, League of Villains, League of Legends, man, that guy is such a child." Nezu arched an eyebrow at that comment. "Stain was not part of the League." "We thought he was, but Stain looked up to All Might," he said, pointing at number 1. "He always said that All Might was the true hero that all others needed to be measured against. Not in it for the fame or glory, he used to talk about that shit for years." "Years?" All Might questioned. "Yeah, he took care of me for a while, but that doesn't matter," Himiko waved her hand dismissively. "You see, if Shigaraki were a true believer like Stain, this would be different, but he just hates your guts and wants to kill you, destroy the system, and all that bullshit. He is saying that he wants to be on top of the new system that he has no ideas for and will be pure chaos. Don't get me wrong, I love some good chaos, but nothing will change, it probably gets worse, to be honest." Himiko shrugged. "Him and that sensei all for one, it just sounds like the plot out of a comic book or some dumb shit like that." "Can you tell us where he is?" Nezu pressed. "No," Himiko's face brightened. "Tomorrow, Shigaraki is going to have an awful day when he goes to try and convert that stupid blonde to his league, that is when Blondie gets to go all murder explosion on their asses." "I don't understand," Nezu said. "How will he interrogate Mr. Bakugo when you deliver him to us?" "Because we cloned him," Himiko said, clapping. 5 times, to be exact. "You have someone who can clone people?" Himi nodded. "And they have the quirk of the person?" Again, Himi nodded. "Is this one of the people you brought with you?" Another nod. "What is it that you want?" All Might asked. "You said you followed Stain and that if Shigaraki did or wanted real change, then you may not be here." "Acceptance first off," Himiko sighed. "And better laws in place to help people, to not label people just because of their quirk or have them dismissed because of it. Magni, here is a girl." Nezu and All Might looked at Magni. "And how she presents has been the source of endless ridicule and discrimination, so her only path was villainy. I need blood, I have to drink it, I love it, but my parents didn't like that, and when they took me to a quirk counselor who told them that they took me to another and then another who told them they could fix me, and I didn't need blood. By them denying you blood, it caused you to lash out after the thirst became too much," Nezu said, looking at Himiko differently. "The denial of blood along with the stereotype that comes with a blood quirk, which I am positive, was accompanied by abuse from your parents, when you would inevitably be caught after drinking the blood of an animal, lead to mental and emotional scarring." "Yeah, sure," Himiko said, glossing over Nezu's response. Twice quirk awakening fucked him up because there was nowhere he could go to get help. Only the rich can afford that, no one looks out for those in the street. No quirk training for those with problematic quirks so they can go on and lead a decent life. Himiko's demeanor was shifting from joyful to angry the more she talked. You need licensing to use your quirk for business or just normal work, that takes money, and that takes training, and that is fucked up. It is all about the flash quirk. Who cares if the person is a piece of trash? Himiko pointed over to the area behind the wall. You have that blonde asshole in your school who is so eager to fight and blow someone up that he doesn't fucking listen unless you threaten to cut off his balls. Acts like a raving lunatic in front of the whole nation, calls the boy I love DEKU. Himiko's eyes were filled with rage. Did anyone see how he broke himself in that forest and fought with the passion and fire of 1,000 suns? And that motherfucker has the nerve to call him DEKU. Did anyone get that bastard some help after 1 minute with him? I could tell that dude ain't right in the head. Himi, Magni said sternly. Okay, I'm cool, Himiko took a deep breath. Look, Mr. Principal, Mr. All Might, we want a fresh start, some help, and I want to be with my Izuku. In exchange, I have provided all the information I promised. Magni. I ain't no lawyer, but it all looks legit. There are some blank spots for names, but they couldn't fill that stuff in, Magni said, looking at the heroes. But we have to stay here at UA and shit till we get rehabilitated, so kind of like a fancy jail, but provisions, food, money kind of shit. It says as long as we don't act all crazy, we can leave campus and shit. Do I get to go to class with Izuku? Himiko said, staring at Nezu. That is part of the deal, I get to be with my Izuku. Yes, Nezu said. Himiko Toga, I welcome you to UA. Himiko smiled, turned, and waved her hand over her head, cautiously twice and Spinner emerged. Twice and Spinner, she said, bowing to Nezu, we are in your care. So when can I see my precious Izuku again? He is still recovering in the hospital but will be discharged tomorrow, Nezu smiled. We will see about him stopping by. If you follow me, I will show you 4 to your accommodations. I won't do well in jail, I will make you my bitch. Twice said as he walked up. Staff meeting. So this undoubtedly a trap is being set up to catch you off guard, Nezu said to All Might. It would seem so, replied All Might in his deflated form. It wasn't time for secrets anymore, not with All for One about to re-emerge. The entire staff had sat there, while the All Might they knew had laid himself bare to them. Telling them all the truth about himself, his quirk, and his relationship with Izuku. Once we have the location, what do we do? Vlad said, his elbows resting on the table. We need to begin to organize an assault. We should be ready to move on Shigaraki's hideout. If we can have an assault team in position at both locations, we may be able to spring a trap of our own, Nezu replied. The problem is and she'll be All for One, All Might said, looking up to the ceiling. We cannot risk him stealing anyone's quirk. But, All Might snapped his fingers, if we have them, keep distance. Then we can remove the risk of their quirks being stolen, Mick said excitedly. I only need line of sight, as always said, a hint of anger permeating his voice. I want this bastard brought down. We need to call in all the top heroes we can, Snipe said, twirling his hat. This showdown can't just be a good old-fashioned duel. As you said, if this fellow is dangerous, we must give it everything we can. I will talk to Endeavor personally, All Might said. We must put aside this petty one-sided rivalry, the greater good is at stake. Once he is located, I can lead the evacuation of the area, said Ectoplasm. I doubt this conflict will stay confined, and this villain does not strike me as the type to take innocent lives into account. What about what Toga said? Midnight asked. She brought someone who can clone people, including their quirks. She may have just delivered the winning hand to us, Nezu said. It seems we are fortunate that Mr. Midoriya not only bid her, but said those sweet words to her, only if you are a good girl, Nezu smirked. You humans are such a strange lot, the things you do for love. Endeavor. The number 2 hero of Japan just fell back in the chair, stunned, shocked, and at a complete loss. His rival, his hated foe, was a shell of himself. It had been for years, the only reason Endeavor had gained any ground had been because he was injured and had to slow down. But even though he was injured and declining, he still held the top spot. All those years, he was pushing Shoto and destroying his family for a goal that was nothing more than a twisted desire in one person's mind. All Might paid the rankings no mind and thought nothing of Endeavor passing him. The rankings were just the public views, and he would have done everything the same, even if he was number 100. Endeavor felt his mind breaking as he thought of how he drove Tuya so hard only to cast him aside when Shoto came along, and what he did to Rei. He just tossed Natsuo to the side like garbage and dismissed Fayumi as nothing more than a caretaker for Shoto. He had based his whole life around this stupid desire. He was running a race against someone he didn't even know they were in one. He never brought out Shoto's fire, it was that kid Izuku, it wasn't him that his son wanted to be. It was All Might. Another classmate had been the one to inspire Shoto, the same one that fought the hero killer, had ended Muscular, torn Nomus apart with his bare hands, and saved Ragdoll. Shoto was chasing Izuku, the same kid who told Endeavor to his face that Shoto wasn't him and that he wasn't All Might. Shoto never told him what Izuku had said during that battle, but Izuku could have ended it. Instead, he kept pushing Shoto while breaking himself. Now, Endeavor sat there, his life had been a lie that he perpetrated on himself. A farce he had forced on his children that he had broken his wife over. The woman he had bought, whom he had forced into marriage, to bear him children for this meaningless goal. Now, the broken symbol had come to him and laid himself bare to ask for help in ending the greatest of evils, to be there and possibly lay down his life to end an ancient scourge. If he survived, he could salvage something of his life, if he lived, he could salvage something worth being remembered for. Izuku. Inside Izuku's hospital room, Class 1 is gathered and debating what to do about Bakugo. Ijiro suggests that they use Momo's device to save Katsuki instead of waiting for the pro-heroes. However, Tenya is against the idea and most of Class 1 agrees. Yuga suggests they leave it to the pro-heroes as they cannot participate in combat. Yumikage agrees with Yuga and says nothing else since he has been saved many times. Tsu stops to remind everyone to be level-headed and not act like villains. Everyone remains silent and distressed. Ochaco tries several times to catch Izuku's gaze, but he only looks at her briefly before looking away. She knows what they should do. Let the pro-heroes handle it, they are not allowed to use their quirks in public, let alone cause a fight with them. Regardless of the circumstances, if they are caught, they will all find themselves, if they are lucky, merely expelled and, at worst, under arrest on vigilante charges. Yet, she thinks about what Izuku would do and knows he would run off to save any of them. We should do it, Ochaco says, ending the silence. See, Ochaco is in, Ijiro says. Look, I am not asking you guys for permission. I talked to Momo, and she agreed that we are going after him tonight. Either you are with me or not, you know Bakugo would do the same. No, he wouldn't, Izuku said to the shock of the class. And if he did, it wouldn't be for some altruistic reason that he wanted to save any of us. It would be just to beat some villains and prove his strength. What are you saying, we should just leave him? Ijiro said, anger in his voice. What I am saying is that one shouldn't attribute reasons that don't exist, and it is reckless for you to go running off thinking you can somehow break him out wherever they are holding him, Izuku said, and he got out of bed to stand. Isn't calling us reckless kind of like the pot calling the kettle black, Dinky said, sounding irritated. It is, Izuku said, and he bared his arms to the class, this is what my recklessness has brought me, the ligaments in my arms are deteriorating, and if I keep injuring myself, they will be damaged beyond repair. He walked around the bed to stand before the entire class. How are you going to get him out without fighting? Are you all going to sacrifice your careers? How are you going to deal with Shigaraki? Your hardening won't save you, Ijiro. What is your plan, Momo? That guy with the metal in his face, what about his fire? The lizard guy is good with knives, then the walking magic act, or don't forget that physical fighter they have, the girl with the knives, and last but least the teleporter from the USJ. Ijiro fell silent. Don't forget about the Nomu's ribbit, Tsu added. You can't just go running off. Izuku went running off at the beginning of the fight at camp, Mineta said, pointing at Izuku. You ran off to save that kid. You ran off in Hosu. When someone else wants to do it, you tell them to stop. Yes, Mineta, I did because there was no other option. I had no idea that Muscular was up there, so I went to get the coda and came back. I ran into the unknown and paid the price, they could hear a hint of pain in his voice. That's what happens when you run into the unknown, you almost die, like in Hosu. And that was because of my stupidity, Tenya said. If he hadn't come after me, and if Shoto hadn't been there, then I would be dead. So your answer is just to sit back and do nothing? Ijiro growled. No, Ijiro, I am saying, what is the plan? How are you and Momo going to get in and out without fighting and without sparking a major fight in the process? Izuku replied. What if a populated area surrounds their base? Mina said quietly, and they unleashed Nomus to chase you down. Running in blind and barely surviving is something I am the king of, Izuku said, placing his hand on Ijiro's shoulder. But it isn't just my life, yours, Momo, or anyone else that we risk running in blind. It is Bakugo's and everyone else that is going to get caught in the crossfire. We all feel like shit that he was taken, we all have a hard time sitting here because we felt like we failed. He looks around at the class. We lost, we all lost. But running in there blind on hope and prayer not only runs the risk of getting you killed, but Bakugo killed and anyone who happens to be around. And if we survive, not only do we run the risk of jail and expulsion, but all the others will suffer because we ran in half-cocked. I am saying that we need a better plan than this. And if you know where he is, why haven't you told the pros? There was a knock at the door and Inko stepped in, surprised to see the crowded room. If you all wouldn't mind stepping out, I want to get changed and go home." "What happened to Muscular?" Mizo said. "He is dead," Izuku said as he turned away from the class. "I would like to get changed now." Quietly, the class filed out. "He is different," Kyoka said as they walked down the hall. "That day changed him." "Do you think he killed Muscular?" Mineta said to the class. "Izuku is not one to lie," Shoto said. "Not about something like that. He is right. If you know where he is, we need to tell the pros. If they don't do anything about it, I will go with you." "If the heroes do not act, then I will go with you as well," Tenya said. "But Izuku is right. We need a plan and we need to tell the pros first." Toga meets Inko. Inko and her son walked out of the hospital to the waiting car, one seated in the back, it pulled away from the curb, taking them to their home and to the UA. It was decided that since Izuku was instrumental in inspiring Toga and her friends to defect, it was essential to come to see them. Once they arrived, Snipe and Nezu greeted them. "Glad to see you up and about, Mr. Midoriya," Nezu greeted them. "Mrs. Midoriya, welcome to UA." Snipe tipped his hat. "Ma'am. Is he safe?" Izuku said quickly. "Yes, he is in the infirmary at the moment. But that is to keep his rescue quiet for the moment," Nezu smiled. "Your girlfriend has brought us quite the boon and we are putting it to good use." Inko raised an eyebrow at this but said nothing. "You need to do something quickly, some members of my class are considering going on a rescue mission." "I did my best to stall them without revealing anything," Izuku responded as they started walking. "His safe return will be announced by the end of the day, we plan on springing our trap soon," Nezu said as they walked. "Now, Mr. Midoriya, there are some things I need to discuss before you meet Ms. Toga. They have brought us an absolute gem for this operation and others. Their loyalty hinges on part of your behavior." Izuku nodded. "It seems that Ms. Toga has not only a unique view of the world, but a perspective that I believe is right in many ways, and she believes that you can be a champion of the reforms she wishes to see take hold in our society. I must inquire if you plan to continue this unique relationship with her." "It is complicated," Izuku said after a moment. "I didn't lie to her when I told her I could fall in love with her if she were a good girl. I think that is true, if someone is willing to change and try to be a good person despite their past, that is admirable, and beyond that, she is cute." He blushed. She walked away from everything and convinced people to follow her for a chance to be loved. As long as he tries and continues to try to be a good person, then yes. How can you not feel something for someone willing to try and change their life to be with you? "Indeed," Nezu said with a smile. "Now, we are still working out a plan of how to facilitate their rehabilitation, but as of right now, even though it is still your summer break, I would like for you to come by and visit, talk with them, and if you feel things are getting dangerous, you need to tell us right away." He held up his paw and Izuku began to protest. "So we can see what we can do to help them. They are all psychologically troubled, but they need help more so than being locked away." "Will he be in danger?" Inko asked, her voice betraying the mother's worry. "I don't believe so," Nezu responded, tapping his chin. "As long as he remembers to be honest, no, he simply has to be himself and be truthful with them. As long as he does that, he will be safe and provide the best option to rehabilitate them and get them the help they need." "Do you think she is in love with him?" Inko pressed. "Yes, her version of it," Nezu said, looking over his shoulder at Inko. "It is probably different and a little obsessive, but I do not believe she means any harm to your son. If I did, then I wouldn't be bringing him here to see her so soon. When I met with her, these moments of clarity and depth caught my attention. The world she is asking for is not one of violence and blood but of love and understanding, of getting people the help they need." As they approached what looked like a basic house set apart from almost everything, Nezu and Snipe stopped walking. "Snipe will hang back as I have things I must attend to," Nezu bowed and walked away. Inko and Izuku walked towards the house, "So this girl," Inko started to say before pausing. "She is your girlfriend?" Izuku looked at her, "Yes," he said hesitantly. "It is hard to." Before he could finish, there was a pitched shriek and scream of his name. He turned in time as Himiko leaped into the air and came crashing into him, her legs wrapped around his waist, her arms around his neck. Izuku stumbled and panicked, thinking she was about to fall. He wrapped one arm around her waist and without thinking, the other went under her ass to support her. Himiko, feeling his hand on her backside, moaned his name as she captured his lips. Izuku was stunned, but this passion roared inside of him and he began to kiss her back with almost reckless abandon. Their mouths parted as their tongues met and explored each other's mouths for a messy, fiery kiss. "Oh, Izuku," she moaned, breaking the kiss for a second, "I missed you." Again, she kissed him as tawdry thoughts filled her head. A polite cough broke the spell and made Izuku realize he was making out with and feeling up a girl in front of his mother. Izuku pulled back. Himiko was annoyed that, yet again, they had been interrupted by someone who magically had appeared. Still clinging to Izuku like a spider monkey, she turned and saw a woman staring at them with an eyebrow raised. She had large round eyes that were green, but a shade darker than her beloved. Her straight shoulder-length hair is also green, coupled with a small spiky ponytail at the back. Although she is slightly overweight and displays signs of aging, her unique appearance still stands out. The resemblance between the woman and her beloved hit Himiko like a semi-truck. Izuku, my darling, who is this? Himiko, this is my mother Inko. This is Himiko, Izuku stuttered out, his hands still frozen in their unique position. Himiko blushed and scrambled to disentangle herself from Izuku. Oh my god, Izuku, why didn't you tell me your mother was coming? She said at a near frantic pace as she smoothed her clothing and hair, trying not to look like she was making out with Inko's son. Still, the woman had seen the whole thing. It is such a pleasure to meet you, Himiko said, bowing. I have been dreaming of meeting you since meeting your son. I can see where he gets his looks from, Himiko laughed awkwardly. Himiko kneeled and lowered her head. I am so sorry you had to witness such a display between us, but it was just so long since I had seen him that I was overcome, and I lost myself in the moment. That was quite the display, Inko said, looking at her son. I was surprised. Himiko internally started to panic, wondering if his mother would forbid them from seeing each other. A forbidden love, she would have to struggle to regain his mother's grace. Once his mother saw how much they were in love, she would relent. Once she saw how her beloved filled her with his passion, his mother would have to understand. Do you love my son? Himiko lifted her head and stared directly into Inko's eyes. She needed to ensure that her future mother-in-law understood the depths of Himiko's love. Yes, mother, I love him with all my being, with every part of my soul. I want to build a house and family with him where you will always be welcome. Wait, what? Izuku stammered. How many children shall you provide our house? Inko asked, her eyebrow raised. Izuku was staring between the two women, utterly confused. I will bear him 2 children, mother, Himiko lowered her head. Unacceptable. Inko said quickly, her hand cutting the air like a knife. Himiko's head lifted and her eyes watered. But mother, Himiko cried. You will give me 4 grandchildren if you wish my blessing. Inko's voice came out like an old-fashioned period drama. Izuku was flabbergasted. It would be my honor, mother, Himiko knelt before Inko. I will bear him 4 children myself, and should I find any others worthy, I will see that they bring honor and children to your house. Wait, others, Izuku stuttered out. You and your allies are to protect him then, Inko commanded. Himiko brought her arm across her chest and a fist over her heart. With all my being mother, I shall protect him, Himiko said dramatically. Izuku's head began to hurt some. When do you desire your first grandchild? I shall expect my first grandchild after he has graduated from this university, but only if you can do the same. Then, regardless of our words today, my blessing will be out of your reach. Inko's head tilted slightly up as she looked down at Himiko. I understand, mother. I must be able to support him in all ways. Himiko nodded. I am glad that you understand, Inko smiled. Now I shall remove myself from this area, but as my son is fresh from the healing bed, I shall take him home at the bottom half of the hour. I shall leave you 2 to resume your pleasantries. Thank you, mother, you are fair and most wise. Himiko said as Inko walked away. What the fuck just happened? Izuku thought. Once his mother was away, Himiko rose and strolled over to Izuku. He couldn't help but let his gaze be lost in the sway of her hips. He forced himself to look into Himiko's eyes, and he saw this sparkle, this happiness mixed with desire. To think you do such things to me in front of your mother, her breathing was quickening as she got closer, he could see her cheeks heating up. He stammered. To know you would put our love on display, Himiko was right before him now. She took his hand and pressed it to her breast, letting out a throaty moan as Izuku went nuclear. When his other brain took over and gave a squeeze, Himiko nearly collapsed right then and there. As she fell against him, he instinctively caught her. As he realized he was rubbing her breast, he tried to pull his hand away, but she held it in place. Please don't take me in front of mother, Himiko moaned, but should you wish it, I will not protest. You can claim me however you want, whenever you want. She tilted her head up and kissed his lips tenderly, seductively. His hand twitched again, eliciting another lustful moan to escape Himiko's lips. Oh, Izuku, she crooned. She looked at him through lidded eyes with a lustful gaze. Izuku didn't understand what came over him as he leaned down and kissed her, passionately claiming her lips, feeling Himiko surrender to him as he pulled her against a tree. She shuddered in pleasure under his kiss and his touch. When he pushed her against the tree, she wondered if he was going to claim her right then, push her panties to the side, and fill her with his ravenous lust. Then he had her hands pinned above her head. When he pulled away, she whined for him to capture her lips again. Then his kisses found her neck and her leg came over his hip, and as she could feel his manhood pressing against her through their clothing, she rocked her hip in a desperate plea to somehow make their union complete. One hand held hers above her head as the other kneaded and teased her breasts. She could not speak, only moan as he kissed and bit her neck. When he made his way to her shoulder, her moans were more desperate than he did it again. He bit down on her shoulder, hard marking her once again as his. It was a wave of release as the heat and want in her core suddenly erupted, crashing down on her. Her sex quivered and pulsed as the eruption from deep inside her came spilling out. Her leg trembled, struggling to hold her up as her crotch bucked against him, with each wave spilling over her, making her pelvis jerk and tremble. All she could manage was a silent scream as ecstasy took over her mind, her eyes rolling to the back of her head. The waves of the orgasm spilled out, running down her legs to his pants. He hadn't even fully claimed her, Himiko thought. He hadn't even touched that part of her body. His hand was over her breasts. As the last wave of pleasure washed through her, she began to tremble in anticipation of when his mouth would find her breasts or her sex. She would have dropped to her knees right then and taken his sex in her mouth if he commanded it. She would have loved every second of him holding her hands and using her mouth to pleasure himself. All she would beg for would be his seed to nourish her. "Did you just?" Izuku whispered. "Yes, my darling," Himiko responded, "see what you do to me, how I ache for you." At those words, Izuku kissed her again. It was tender, and she opened her mouth to invite him in. As he did so, it was still tender, almost like he was worshipping her with his kiss. When he released her hands, they slowly slid down around his neck as she returned his loving kiss. His mother's call pulled them from the little world they had found themselves in. Immediately, Himiko felt a longing as he pulled away. "I will call you so your absence will not be as devastating," she whispered, kissing him again before he left her. Himiko leaned against the tree in a dreamlike state, watching him walk away. Once he was out of sight, she stumbled back to the little house. She couldn't stop smiling. Izuku sat in silence as they drove away from UA. The whole night had been almost as baffling as the night at camp, thankfully, without the physical danger. He hazarded a glance at his mother, but Inko was not even hazarding a glance at her son. She was solely fixated on the task of driving. She didn't even ask for his order when they pulled through In-N-Out Burger. Instead, she placed their order, paid, and handed him their food box to hold. They arrived at their apartment, exited the vehicle, and silently walked up the stairs. They entered the apartment, set their belongings in their proper place, and sat to eat in silence. Izuku took a big bite of his 4x4 animal-style burger. He glanced at his mother and her double protein style, slowly setting his food down as she did the same. Their eyes met. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His mother did the same, and this process repeated a few more times. "Okay, I can't take it," he said slightly louder than he intended. Inko winced, blushed, and quickly took some of her food. What was that? Inko's cheeks puffed like a chipmunk pointed to her mouth, indicating that it was full and she couldn't talk. Imperial dramas. 4 children. What in the world happened back there? Inko took her sweet time to masticate her food before she could respond adequately. "I don't know what you are referring to, my son," she replied coolly. "I had a brief conversation with a young lady that you have expressed an interest in, and judging by the display of affection that I bore witness to, I felt it was best for her to understand what is required to gain my approval." "That?" Izuku said, quickly placing his hands on the table and standing up. "That right there. What the heck is that?" "I know not what you are speaking of, my son," Inko said as her head tilted slightly, her gaze narrowed, and she brought her fingers up to rest daintily against her cheek. "As the matriarch of this house, it is important that I fulfill my obligations as such." "As the matriarch?" Izuku sat down. He even felt himself wilt under her imperial gaze. He shook his head. He mustn't wilt, he must stand tall. Inko watched as his posture changed. His shoulders squared, and he leveled his gaze to meet hers directly. "Mother, I find this sudden change in your manner of speaking odd. I am simply trying to get to the bottom of this." "So you are meeting me with defiance?" Inko's voice carried a hint of displeasure. "Have you grown so much that you no longer require my intervention?" "I have said nothing of the sort," Izuku replied. "I am simply voicing my concern as a son should. I always need you, I should have leaned on you more, told you sooner, not shut you out of my life as I have." "It pleases me to hear your words," Inko's voice softened ever so slightly. "I do not wish to be shut out, I wish to support you as you become a young man, a hero, and a father. Seeing you slip into such a role, the hero role, has made it difficult for me to adjust. The pain and anguish that has closed your heart against me, the anger I have seen below the surface. I wish nothing more than your happiness and well-being. But I hope this is the start of a more open and honest relationship between us, and one where you no longer will lie in mud to dirty yourself just for the sake of others." "You are right," Izuku responded, his voice crisp and clear. "Hero-like, I get it now." He snapped his fingers. "What is it that you believe you have perceived?" Inko replied with a devilish smirk. "This is like when I go all hero, I am not nervous or unsure," Izuku said, relaxing and blushing as he realized what he was doing. It happens when I need to handle a situation. I see, you may be correct, Inko also relaxed. She took a deep breath and blushed. I don't know why it happened, I just panicked and she spread her arms out and shrugged. I know. It is like a switch flips and you don't even realize you are doing it. Izuku said, blushing some, taking a drink of his milkshake. It is so embarrassing. Inko giggled, doing the same with her iced tea, seeing her son nod in agreement made them both laugh. Izuku looked at his mother and couldn't help but feel his love for her swell, she seemed so happy then. He stopped and looked at her meal, it was more on the healthy side, at least as far as a fast food meal could be. She was cutting carbs, had no french fries, and had no bun. Her clothes fit a bit looser, and the roundness of her cheeks was not as apparent. She had started taking better care of herself, it was time for him to do the same. I love you, Mom, he said with all the compassion he could muster. I love you too, Izuku, she said, responding kindly to his declaration. That was still quite a display you put on with Himiko, though, I think it is important that tomorrow we go and see about getting you started on birth control. Izuku's bravado fell through the floor at that point as he blushed, stammered, and stared at the floor. Mom, but. It is for both of your protection, Izuku, you are not ready to be a father, she is not ready to be a mother, Inko said as she tried to remove some of the embarrassment of the situation. But it is obvious at least there is passion there, and that can lead to making some hormonal decisions, I just want you to be safe. She is in the middle of a huge transition in her life, and it is important that if you truly mean to support her, you make sure an accident doesn't lead to a further complication, which neither of you is ready for, though I would love grandbabies. Izuku just continued to blush and fidget with his hands. But you need to get better, she needs to get better, and so do I. Now let's eat our dinner. You take a bath and then we can watch something together on television. Sounds good, Mom, Izuku said, picking up his burger again. I wonder if Himiko likes hamburgers. Maybe we can go on a date. I want to get to know her more, he thought. The bar with no name. Bring him out, Shigaraki said with a sickening grin. Magni just shrugged and walked down the hall. I do not mean to disparage your attempts, my good sir, but I feel that you may be wasting your breath, Mr. Compress commented as Kurogiri handed him his bourbon. Just watch and see, Shigaraki said as he wiped the back of his head. Damn it, Kurogiri, why is it so damn hot in here? I apologize, young master, the man replied. I sent Spinner to check it out and the unit appears damaged. Someone seems to have stolen the compressor. Are you fucking telling me that the League of Villains have their air conditioner compressor stolen? Shigaraki said in disbelief. That is correct, sir, Kurogiri responded. Fine. After this, we will find who stole from us and kill them. Shigaraki said. How does one go about getting that fixed? Mr. Compress mused. Us is repair, Kurogiri replied. They charge a fair price and don't ask questions. They are very adept at repairing all sorts of machinery. They repaired the trans-digital Freon converter just last week. And what does that do? Shigaraki asked. It makes ice cubes. Kurogiri said with a hint of pride. You mean to tell me with all the other things wrong in this place, you call them to only fix the fucking ice machine? Shigaraki bellowed. Need I remind you, sir, that this is my bar and I choose what to repair, Kurogiri retorted. You said, and I quote, I don't fucking care what else happens as long as I have my internet and my energy drinks. I did say that, Shigaraki muttered. Fine, call Gus and get the air conditioning fixed. As you wish, young master, Kurogiri bowed his head. I may have hitched my wagon to the wrong horse, Mr. Compress muttered. Magni came back and set Bakugo's chair before Shigaraki, the rest of the league wandered in to watch. What the fuck do you want? Bakugo spat out. What's the matter? Can't afford a proper air conditioner. Shut up. Shigaraki snapped. It is being repaired, but I didn't bring you up here to discuss the lack of air conditioning. I brought you up here because you are playing on the wrong team. After what those so-called heroes did to you. Shigaraki held up his phone with a picture of Bakugo chained to the podium at the sports festival, foaming at the mouth, and the caption read, when mom doesn't bring home the dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggies. They chained you up like an animal, embarrassed you in front of the whole world. Shigaraki leaned forward. I see what is there, someone bound and shackled by the rules and expectations that a false society put on them. You weren't meant to be chained. You were meant to show them all how powerful you truly are. To make them bow before you, to lay waste to those who would repress you. Join me, join my league, and take your rightful place in this world at the very top. Shigaraki extended his hand dramatically. Are you fucking kidding me? Bakugo roared. What makes you think I am anything like you or your bunch of fucking rejects? Get a fucking life, you piece of shit. Let me out of these restraints and I will kick all your asses. Fine. Shigaraki sneered. I thought your eyes had been opened, but you willfully kept them shut. Oh god, did you write this out and practice it in a mirror? And you ass clowns follow this stinky motherfucker. Bakugo tilted his head back and started to fake laugh. This guy is such a loser. No wonder you use that hand to cover your ugly mug. So when people see you, they don't scream, "Dear God, what is that fucking hideous thing?" I mean fucking extra crispy has a better chance not making babies cry than your ugly mug. You shut up. Shigaraki's hand lashed out to dust Bakugo when a voice came from the speaker on the bar and Shigaraki's hand froze a few inches from Bakugo's face. That is enough, Shigaraki. He is intentionally trying to rile you up, the voice said. Kurogiri, send him to me. I knew you couldn't be the real one in charge, Bakugo grinned. Get him out of here. Shigaraki spat at Kurogiri. A swirling black mist consumed Bakugo. Bakugo. He emerged in a darkened warehouse, tumbling to the floor free of imprisonment. His hand slipped into his pocket, hitting send on the phone hidden there. Welcome to my parlor, said the spider to the fly, a voice echoed out of the darkness. Are you fucking kidding me? Bakugo muttered. He got to his feet, scanning the area around him, small explosions popping in his hands. Did you bring me here so I could kick your ass? He said. How brave of you. The voice came again, echoing around the room. You are already dead, you just don't know it yet. A mocking laughter filled the room. Oh really, I hope you brought a fucking army with you. Bakugo said, ready to fight. I don't need an army to deal with you. Bakugo felt something grab him and yank him into the darkness. Bakugo tumbled across the floor, a light sprang to life as he sprang to his feet, revealing an imposing figure sitting upon what appeared to be some makeshift throne. He was tall even while sitting down, Bakugo noted. He had a large muscular build similar to All Might. He was wearing a navy blue skull-like gas mask with angular tubes at the top, a wide collar-like life support system around his neck with additional pipes connecting in the front and back. A fine tailored black suit, a black shirt, and a blood-red tie. Good thing you are already dressed for your funeral. Bakugo yelled as he fired a massive explosion from all the sweat he had built up sitting in an unair-conditioned bar. But he didn't stop there. He fired more in rapid succession, and smoke filled the room. Suddenly, a hand burst from the smoke, snatching Bakugo by the throat. The young hero in training fired off more explosions until there was nothing left, and as the ringing in his ears subsided, all he could hear was the man's laughter. Pathetic. The man spat as the smoke cleared. Bakugo clawed at the hand, strangling him as it lifted him off the ground. After I take your quirk, maybe I will let you live out the rest of your pathetic life as a quirkless piece of trash. The man said menacingly. Suddenly, the doors to the warehouse exploded inward and standing there was the All Might. Release young Bakugo. He yelled. Your days are over all for one. This ends here. You're right, All Might. This does end here. It ends with your death. All for one yelled. Watch closely, little worm, as I use your quirk to end All Might once and for all. Bakugo's eyes widened in fear. All for one activated his quirk, ready, when suddenly Bakugo turned into a pile of goo in his hands. What? All for one muttered in confusion. The bar. Shigaraki was sitting at the bar seething while drinking one energy drink after another. When the door to the basement exploded outward, Bakugo came racing out. What the hell? Shigaraki yelled as Dabi leaped to his feet and fired a jet of blue fire toward their attacker. Bakugo rolled to his right and fired off an explosion that sent Dabi flying across the bar and crashing into a wall. Shigaraki was knocked off his bar stool. Mr. Compress went to spring into action to trap their assailant, only for a massive right hook from Magni to send him sprawling. Twice, he ran at a dazed Dabi. Surrender peacefully, fight back. He yelled. Dabi growled and let loose a large blast of fire, engulfing Twice, who screamed and melted. What? Dabi stammered out before he screamed as a knife plunged into his shoulder blade. Shigaraki recovered quickly, grabbing a bar stool, he hurled it at Bakugo, who rolled to the side. Kurogiri opened a portal to catch a flying table, it opened up behind Magni, knocking her to the ground. Shigaraki grabbed Bakugo's leg and activated his quirk. The boy yelled and melted. What the fuck is going on here? He yelled as a knife flew through the air stabbing him in the shoulder. We quit. Toga yelled as she closed the distance quickly. Kurogiri went to react, but the bar exploded as Magni came bursting through, spearing him into the back shelves. Dabi whirled and tried to hit Spinner, who had just stabbed him. Spinner ducked another blade flashing to his hand as he drove into Dabi's thigh, forcing the fire user to scream in pain. His scream was cut short as Spinner drove his knee into Dabi's face, silencing him. Shigaraki decayed the blade in his shoulder, he could fully get out of the way of Toga's next strike. The blade cut diagonally across his chest, sending him stumbling. Before he could regain his composure, 3 more Bakugos ran out of the basement. An explosion hit him in the back, sending him crashing into a still-standing section of the bar. He felt the knife pierce his leg. He spun his fingers, grazing Toga's face as his quirk activated. She laughed manically as she melted. Dabi created a pillar of flame engulfing Spinner, and he melted to nothing. He turned to see a back Warrock Shigaraki with a right cross. Another placed his hands on Shigaraki's chest and fired point blank, sending him crashing through the front window of the bar. Kurogiri opened a portal at Magni's feet. As they began to fall through it, he snapped it shut, severing his attacker in half, but there was no blood as both halves melted. He saw Shigaraki fly. He went to save his master when two hands wrapped around his collar. "Not today, asshole." The third Bakugo yelled as he let loose with all he had on the teleporter. Kurogiri screamed as he was launched over the bar top and his attacker was launched back into the wall. Dabi stumbled to his feet. Floodlights suddenly flared to life, flooding the bar. Shigaraki looked up as Mariko delivered a punt kick, lifting him and crashing into the sign above the bar and the brick wall behind it, knocking him out. Kurogiri lifted his head as he saw his charge fall limply. He struggled to his knees. Dabi saw Bakugo leaping through the air towards Kurogiri. He fired off as massive a flame as he could, melting the copies and blowing a hole through the side wall of the bar. "Kurogiri, You need to do nothing foul, villain, for I am here." Dabi hurried to his left. He turned at the movement, but the last thing he saw was a massive fist. Mr. Compress got to his feet and dashed out the newly created side exit. As he did so, he didn't see the spider web of threads waiting for him before it was too late. Mr. Compress felt himself suddenly lifted from the ground as if cocooned. "Blackout bind" was the last thing he heard as his world went dark. Desperately, Kurogiri tried to activate his quirk to save Shigaraki as he saw All Might coming for him. When his quirk failed, he saw past the lights the floating hair of Eraserhead. A fog parted for a moment, Shoda he whispered like a prayer in the night before All Might sent him to join the others in unconsciousness. Kamino Ward. Heroes and police scrambled to get the area evacuated. Nezu sat in the command center directing traffic. Mandalay of the wild pussycats, relaying commands to heroes and the people alike, doing all she could to keep them calm. Pixie Bob's earth beasts flooded the area, moving people quickly and efficiently. Ragdoll was there, ensuring no one was left behind. Tiger was on the ground level, ensuring nothing snuck up on them. When Nezu approached them and told them his plan, they immediately leaped at the chance to get back at the villains who had attacked their camp, nearly kidnapped one of their own, and tried to kill Kota. They were not about to let this chance pass them by. They owed this to Izuku for what the boy had done that night. They were not about to let these monsters escape. The doctor. "Sir, the heroes are everywhere." Dr. Ganaki called out over the radio. "Unleash the Nomu," his master called back. Dr. Genki scrambled to unleash his creations upon the heroes. He watched with glee as the tubes began to open. He watched as they tore these pathetic heroes limb from limb. "Yes, my pets unleash hell," he yelled out, cackling madly. He watched his horde run towards the doors, ready to unleash hell. All color drained from his face when the doors began to melt and a chorus of prominence burn could be heard before roars of flames drowned everything out. He quickly switched to another camera angle. There at the doors stood 5 endeavors. The Nomus, not incinerated in the initial onslaught, came bursting forth. The doctor stumbled back from the monitors as multiple copies of Edshot, Best Jeanist, Present Mick, Gang Orca, and Mariko rushed the facility. "Twice," he screamed. United States of ass whooping. All for One barely managed to shift his quirks to a defensive nature when All Might rushed him. He stood ready for All Might to come in and punch him, almost giggling at the surprise he had in store for All Might. Again, All for One was confused when All Might didn't punch him. Instead, he wrapped his arms around him and carried him crashing through the wall out of the building. But this wasn't All for One's first rodeo. He planted his feet, used All Might's momentum, and rolled back, throwing All Might off him. "Nice try, All Might," All for One chuckled. A minor quirk activates, shedding all dust from his suit and making it appear pristine again. "You should have left me inside. Now, the world will witness your destruction." All for One looked to the skies, expecting to see news copters and hear screams of panic. Instead, it was strangely silent. He looked towards where the warehouse was with the Nomu. He caught sight of the fire and could listen to the sounds of battle, but something was off. "Expecting an audience," All Might said as he got to his feet. "Some grand stage where you would monologue about victory and put on some display before the citizens of Japan. Attempt to make them fear, to destroy their belief in me. I will drag your body before the masses, display your corpse for all to see," All for One sneered. "You are weak, All Might, you cannot defeat me. Come, embrace death, embrace the inevitable, like your mentor, like all the others, will die by my hands tonight." He cackled evilly. "You're right, All for One. I may be weak, but we are strong enough," All Might yelled. "We?" All for One said once again, confused. Suddenly, almighty forces dropped from the sky. Not just 1 or 2, but 9 other All Mights landed, surrounding All for One. "No, what is happening? How is this possible?" All for One said, stunned, fear coursing through him. He activated his defensive quirks. "Because a boy bit a girl," the All Might yelled. Even through the skull mask, All Might could see All For One's confusion. The first All Might charged in, All For One was ready, but suddenly, he felt his quirks shutting down and disappearing like they were being erased. "Oh, this is fair," All For One muttered. Rhode Island smash. The first fist collided and All For One stumbled, trying to change quirks to mitigate the damage. Delaware smash. It worked for a moment. Connecticut smash, he barely felt that one. New Jersey, that one stung a bit. New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, knocked him around like a top. Hawaii smash. That one landed in the gut, doubling him over. Maryland, that was an uppercut. West Virginia right side ribs. South Carolina, left side ribs. Maine, straight right. Indiana pump kick to the chest. Kentucky elbow to the back of the head. Tennessee, right cross. Virginia left cross. Ohio, a kick to the groin. Pennsylvania, knee to the face. Mississippi kick to the kneecap. Louisiana running punt kick to the face, now he was airborne. Alabama, double axe handle slams back towards the ground. Arkansas bicycle kicks back into the air. North Carolina, leaping spin kick, now he is going sideways. New York, downward kick back into the ground. Iowa, flying elbow drop. Illinois, lifted, wedgied, and thrown. Georgia, clothesline. Wisconsin kick to the ribs. Florida, yanked to his feet and headbutted. Missouri, rabbit punch. Oklahoma, knee to the gut, then spun around. North Dakota, left to the jaw, thankfully, he is wearing a mask that keeps his teeth in. He switched to just trying to heal and survive, those get erased, too. Fuck that guy, he screams mentally. Washington, right to the jaw. South Dakota, left hook, Nebraska, right hook. Kansas, Idaho, their blows arrive simultaneously, nearly squashing his head. Utah, Minnesota, spin kicks from the front and back, and his sternum breaks. Michigan fails to let him fall, instead, the uppercut lifts him up and back off his feet. Wyoming is a catch and slam with a bounce. Oregon kicks him into the air. Colorado catches him and brings him down. His back bends unnaturally across All Might's knee, and then he tosses him. Nevada straight right. Arizona, maybe a left, he All For One can't tell anymore. New Mexico, more pain. Montana, that one hurt. California, oh, that wasn't so bad, oh wait, there it is. Texas, oh good, it is almost over. Alaska, up in the air again really. As All For One fell back towards the ground, his body broken, his massive arsenal of quirks not doing much anymore, he pondered that if All Might was going to do the heroic thing and spare him, he could heal and trigger his backup plan with Tamara. He landed in a heap. He tried to move, but he couldn't. He tried to speak, but he couldn't. He felt himself yanked up to his knees and heard multiple roars of anger. United States of Smash. Well, shit, he thought, and that was his final thought. Izuku and Himiko. When Himiko's phone vibrated, she nearly jumped out of her skin. She grabbed it and giggled when she saw a message from her lover. Izuku, hello Himiko. I hope you are doing well. Would you like to go on a date on Thursday so we can spend some time together and get to know each other better? Himiko. I am available to you whenever you desire, my love. Will I be able to see you tomorrow? Izuku. I don't think so. I'm sorry. I have to take care of something and I want to make sure I can plan our date. Himiko. You don't have to do anything special. If I could be with you, that would be perfection. Izuku. Thank you, but I want it to be special. This is our first date and you are worth it. Himiko nearly fell off her bed. Izuku, good night Himiko. I promise to text you tomorrow. Himiko. Good night, my love, I will wait to read your words with bated breath. Himiko quickly stripped off her shirt and bra, tossed her hair, and made sure to snap the perfect topless photo of her lying on the bed. Himiko. Something just for you, I hope it will make you come to me sooner. Izuku. Oh sweet baby Jesus. Himiko's giggles and laughter could be heard throughout the house. Twice exhausted from using his quirk, he pulled his pillow over his head and fell right back asleep. Spinner looked over at Magni. Are you going to go see what that is about? Spinner said. Hell to the fuck no, Magni responded. Are you? Nope, Spinner said as they returned to watching a movie. Thanks for watching guys. Hope you all are enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a like, share and subscribe. Also don't forget to support author of this fanfic. So let's end this video here. Until then, see you in next video.